Story 1. Mom chose my step-siblings over me and demanded to share my deceased dad's college fund or move out in a week. So, some backstory before I get into what happened. I'm a 17-year-old girl, and I live with my mother, 43F, my stepdad, and my 2 step-siblings. I have 1 stepbrother and a younger stepsister, but we are not close to each other. My stepbrother, let's call him Jackson, is a year older than me, and my stepsister, Emma, is 2 years younger than me. All of us go to the same high school, but we don't have any friends in common, and we have just been close. My mother got married to their father after dating for almost 5 years. The wedding was 3 years ago, but our families have been living together for 6 years now, and the wedding was just a formality. As for my father, he unfortunately passed away when I was really little, and I never got to spend much time with him. I barely even remember him because I was very young when he passed away. My parents were never married, and my dad's family didn't approve of my mother because she was a bit of a party girl and didn't have a good reputation back then in their town. So, they lived together for a short time but didn't get married because then his parents would have probably cut him off. He was diagnosed with leukemia in its later stages when he was just 27, and by the time they found out about it, it was too late to do anything. Thankfully, he had the time to get his affairs in order, and he managed to set up an education fund for me for after he was gone so I would have nothing to worry about, and my mother wouldn't have to push herself to work hard after he passed away. I have always known about it since his lawyer told me when I was really young. My dad's lawyer was the one controlling the flow of the money, but after I turned 18, I would be in full control of the fund. For a long time after my dad passed away, it was just me and my mother, and I got used to it. Then, my stepdad came into the picture when I was around 8 years old, and after dating for a while, all of us moved in together. My mother had moved out of the town that we used to live in because she said that it was just too painful to live in the same place that she and my dad had met. I have never met my grandparents on my dad's side of the family because my dad's parents were just never interested in meeting me. We do occasionally visit my mom's parents, and they're nice enough, but my mother's family is not really connected. So, when I moved in with my stepdad and his kids, I had really high hopes because I thought that I was finally going to have a big and happy family. I had a lot of expectations when I was younger, but sadly, my new family didn't manage to live up to it, and I don't really blame them for it, but it was quite disappointing for me when I was little. It wasn't as though they didn't make me feel welcome or they treated me badly, but there was something really off about everybody's energy. All of us lived together, but we never really felt like a family, and I never managed to connect with either my stepdad or his kids. We would live in the same house, but they never really made an effort to make me feel comfortable or try to get to know me. I tried several times, but they didn't seem very enthusiastic about it, so I gave up after trying for a couple of months. I accepted that all of us were more like glorified roommates rather than actual family, and that was it. I didn't romanticize it. My mother, however, was a different story because she was treated differently by them. That energy toward my mom was completely different, and they actually treated her like a part of the family. I might be way off here, but I feel like part of the reason that my step-siblings and my stepfather were happy to include my mother and play happy family with her and exclude me was because my stepdad's ex-wife had been kind of a nightmare. I have never met her myself, but I have heard about her, and she was a total gold digger from what I heard, who left my stepdad almost penniless after the divorce. He had to build his life back from scratch, and to make matters worse, he also had to take care of my step-siblings on his own. Their mother had given up custody and abandoned them to take off with her new lover shortly after the divorce. Meeting a woman like my mother, who is the exact opposite of his ex-wife, was probably great for all of them, but I was not really required in that scenario. And that's exactly how they made me feel, like an afterthought. I can't define it, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but it was just based on vibes and energy. I always got that feeling that, in spite of being part of the family, I wasn't really part of the family. My only consolation was the fact that I could have been overthinking things, and that's what I used to tell myself whenever things would get a little too much for me. It feels weird to say this, but I was actually kind of jealous because it felt like my mother had finally found her people, but I was still on the outside. I started resenting all of them after a few years because it was like I'd been left behind or something. I never brought it up with anybody because it always just seemed petty and meaningless, so I didn't want to make a big deal out of it by saying anything about it. That's how life was, and I wasn't okay with it, but I was content. Now, coming to what happened a couple of days ago, I've been looking for colleges for the past few weeks because I'm supposed to graduate in a few months, and I need to start sending out applications. I'm not worried about the money because, like I said, my mother had always told me that there was a fund set aside for me, and that's what I was going to use. But then, a few days ago, my mother said that she needed to talk to me about something really important. She told me that my stepfather hadn't been able to save money for his kids to go to college. So she needed me to help my family out and let my step-siblings take the money from my college fund as well. Jackson had taken a gap year and was about to start college at the same time as me, so that's what the conversation was really about. Legally, my mother couldn't control the funds because, in his will, my father had clearly stated that only I would be able to control where I spent my money after I turned 18. And if I'm being honest, I didn't want to share the money with my step-siblings. For starters, I didn't consider them family, and I'm sure that neither did they. And secondly, even if I didn't end up using the entire amount that my father had kept for me, I would still like to use it for myself. That kind of money could really help me get a head start and be useful to me when I get my own apartment and stuff until I started earning. He was going to help me out. I had already saved a lot since I went to public school instead of private, and my mother didn't have to spend any money on my education so far. I was also a really good student, so I was hoping to get a scholarship in whichever college I decided to apply and enroll in. Money had never been a matter of concern for me, but now that I was getting older and I was about to turn 18 in a few months, I was starting to think about saving and earning. So, giving away money from my funds to my step-siblings didn't sound like a great idea. So, I told my mother that I wouldn't be sharing those funds with them because I didn't think that it was necessary. If Jackson really wanted to go to college, he could just do what millions of kids do anyway and get a student loan. My mother was not pleased with my answer, and she said that I was being selfish, but I didn't even disagree. I was indeed being selfish, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. So, instead of arguing with her, I just told her that I was being selfish, and it was completely fine because I didn't consider my step-siblings family. That's when my mother started screaming at me because, apparently, she believed that what I had said was no less than a criminal offense. It took me a few seconds to even process the fact that she was losing her mind simply because I had spoken the truth and told her that I didn't think of my step-siblings as family. The double standards were crazy because, on one hand, the family had been treating me like an outsider for the past 8 years, and she had never seemed to notice it, or maybe she did notice it and she just didn't care. But when it came to me, I had to consider them family and treat them as such for absolutely no reason. I tried to speak to her calmly and without screaming in her face, but there was no point because she was already going off on me and calling me ungrateful and whatnot. So, I waited for her to finish yelling at me, and then I told her that she could scream at me all she wanted, but I wasn't going to change my mind. The only thing that screaming at me was going to accomplish was alienate me even more and make me feel even less inclined to help them out in any capacity. My mother calmed down a little after I said that, and I thought that we were finally going to have a rational discussion afterward and I would finally be able to voice out my feelings. But that was foolish of me. I had forgotten that, in that household, my feelings absolutely didn't matter, and all that mattered was if my mother, my stepfather, and my step-siblings were happy. My happiness was not very important to any of them. So, after my mother calmed down, she told me that I had a week to make up my mind, but after that, she would be forced to kick me out of the house. I thought that she was joking because it was simply ridiculous, but she told me that she was and since my birthday was coming up in less than a month, she would soon not even be legally obliged to let me live with them because I wouldn't be a minor anymore. So, I would be out of the house and completely on my own if I didn't agree to share the college fund that my father had specifically set up just for me with my step-siblings. I could hardly even believe that my own mother would say such a thing and put me in such a difficult position just for the sake of my step-siblings when I was supposed to be her own flesh and blood. She told me to tread carefully and think this over because this decision could cost me everything, and then she left the room while I sat there and tried to process what she just said. It was incredibly insulting for me to be treated that way by my own mother, and that day, I made up my mind that I was going to get out of this house no matter what the cost. So, I started talking to my friends and told them that I needed help to find an apartment of my own because I was planning to move out for my 18th birthday. I told them everything that my mother had said and explained the urgency of the situation to them. I knew that, once I turned 18, I would get all the money, and then I would be able to control where I spent it. Yes, I would have to stick to a budget and choose my degree in college very carefully, but it was worth it because that meant that, at least now, I would be able to move out and live on my own instead of putting up with my family, or rather, forcing them to tolerate me, because after that conversation with my mother, it was clear as day that I was not welcome in that house at all, and I really was an afterthought. All these years, I had not been overthinking anything. In fact, I might have even been underthinking things because I really had never seen this coming. A couple of days passed, and a friend of mine told me that she had been able to speak to a cousin who was also applying to the same colleges that I was, because we had an interest in the same field. She was planning to live in an apartment because she wanted to be independent from the beginning, and my friend had suggested that I get in touch with her so that, if we ended up going to the same college, we could rent out an apartment together and live there. I thought that it was a great idea and got in touch with my friend's cousin almost immediately. We worked out everything, and I told them about my situation as well. She seemed to be very empathetic, and I could tell that she was a nice person and I would get along with her, so that part was all sorted out. The only thing I had to worry about was where I would live until college started, since there were quite a few months to go before that. But it turned out to be pretty easy for me to figure that one out because my friends told me that I could take to living with them until college finally started. It was a messy and risky plan, but I was willing to go through with it because anything would be better than living with my mother and these people, because the way that I was being treated after that fight with my mom was horrible. And I don't mean horrible in the sense that they were speaking to me badly or torturing me or whatever, but what they were doing was far more humiliating. They had all ganged up on me and were acting like I was the single most disgusting creature to ever exist. Like, if I would enter a room, everybody would instantly stop talking and go back to their own rooms. They would give me the side eye all the time and refuse to even speak to me like I'd done something wrong. It was humiliating, and I felt like running away because it just felt so bad. It took me a while to arrange something for myself, but I made up my mind that, as soon as my friends were ready to take me in, I would leave this place. So, the day that my mother spoke to me again to ask me if I had changed my mind or not, I decided to tell her the truth and then leave. I told her that I had not changed my mind as a matter of fact, and that I would actually be leaving this place. I told her that the way that she and her family had been treating me for the past week was nothing short of psychotic, and I couldn't put up with it anymore. I told her that I had already spoken to a couple of friends and that I would be living with them until I could start college and move away from here. I said that I never wanted to see her again, so she was free to kick me out, and it wouldn't make a difference to me. I already had a plan in mind. So, I wasn't very surprised when my mother started yelling at me once more and told me that I needed to get out of her house because this was no place for selfish, ungrateful brats like me. I left pretty gladly, and I was happy to see the last of them, but that wasn't the end of the road for my plan. During the time that I had been spending in my room all by myself, I had been thinking of ways to get back at my mother. Ever since she got married to my stepfather, life had changed for me, and not in a good way. But she didn't even seem to care about it because she was happy with her new family. I had tried to be happy for her and suppress my own feelings about this. But now it was very obvious that she didn't care about me in general, and her stepkids were more important to her than me. The way she had been treating me made me feel like crap, and I had made up my mind that I was not going to let this go unanswered. So that's why, as soon as I was out of the house, I decided to spill the beans on her and let everybody know what kind of a person she really was. The only reason I had even waited for a week to get out of her house and then speak about her ridiculous demands was because I didn't want her to be able to have any access to me to even tell me how disappointed she was in me or whatever, because nobody in their right mind would ever support things that she had said to me, and I knew that. Once I had moved in with a friend, I decided to go online and make a post about my mother. I typed out the incident that took place and how my mother had been screaming at me just because I didn't want to contribute to my step-siblings' college fund. I also mentioned that none of them had ever treated me like family, but my mother never seemed to have a problem with that. It was only a problem when I did the same thing to them. I talked about the double standards. I also mentioned how she had practically forgotten about me once she started living with her new family, and I also said that I found her to be the single most selfish being on this planet because of the way that she had been behaving with me just for saying no to something completely ridiculous. Any sane person in my position would have said no, since the money that she had been talking about had been left to me specifically by my father. It was not anybody else's to use, and I didn't think it was fair to demand that I share it with people who never made me feel like a part of their family. I might have even considered it if my step-siblings had been nice to me at any point, but that was not the case here. I was really frustrated, and I let out all my frustration in that one post. I knew that this negatively impacted my mother since I had a lot of people who followed me, including my mother's friends and their kids, but at the time I just didn't care, and I wanted to get back at her. Truth be told, she had been my only source of support and happiness throughout my life because I had only one parent to count on, and my grandparents weren't really in touch with me. She had been my first and most important friend, so when she chose my step-siblings over me, it felt like a huge betrayal. I was really hurt, and I just wanted to get it all out of my system without caring about the consequences. So, I made that post, and exactly what I had expected would happen is what happened. I received several messages from my mother saying that I had ruined her life because everyone had seen that post and it had been shared numerous times. My mother was pretty popular among her circle of friends, so there was no big surprise that people were just looking for an excuse to gossip about her, and I had played right into their hands. She had tried to call me several times, but I didn't answer any calls, and neither did I respond to any texts. I was just miserable, and I had hoped that making the post would make me feel less upset, but the messages that my mother sent me after that only made me feel worse about my decision. I could tell through her texts that she was really torn up about this. She said things like, "She never expected me to do something like this. She had believed that she had raised me to be kind and compassionate, but I was the opposite of both those things. She couldn't even believe that I was her daughter anymore." And then, she pulled out the big guns and told me that, had my dad been alive today to witness this vindictive and malicious side of me, he would be terribly disappointed and wouldn't even want to be related to me. That really got me, and I felt like I was doing something horrible. I started rethinking everything, and that's what brought me here. At this point, I don't even know if it was right of me to not want to share my funds with my step-siblings. I don't know if I should make things right with my mother and the others because I don't even know if I can face them anymore after what I did. But also this might be a very clever way of trying to manipulate me, and if it is, it's definitely working. That's why I need you guys to help me, because now that everybody has the facts, I can finally come to a conclusion. So, AITA for refusing to share my college fund with my step-siblings and then making a post against my mother? Update 1. Hi. So first, thank you so much for the responses. A lot of you sent me really kind messages, and it made me feel better about myself and what I did. I guess I needed that to see things for what they truly are. I was about to give my mother a chance again just because I wanted to see the good in her, and I wanted to believe that she wasn't a bad person, but what kind of mother says and does the things that she did? She's just not a good person, and it's time that I accepted it instead of trying to fight it. So, I blocked her to make sure that she couldn't reach out to me again. I knew that if she texted me again, it would only be to manipulate me or to get that post down. I don't want to take that post down. I want it to stay up at least until she apologizes to me. She knows where I am because my friend's mother told her that I was living with them, so she knows where to reach me. And in spite of knowing, if she doesn't reach out to me, I'll take it as a sign that neither does she care about me, and not just that she cares about her own reputation. Update 2. So, it's been 2 weeks since I have been living with my friend and have moved out from my stepfather's house. After that post, I had absolutely zero contact with everyone from my family. I did go to school a couple of days, and I ran into Emily a few times, but she just shot me a really nasty look and pretended like I wasn't even there. Not surprising, considering the fact that they are pretty much experts in pretending that I don't exist. They've been doing it for the past 8 years. They must have found it even easier now. Anyway, my mother finally came to visit me last evening. She arrived here with a black plastic bag that people generally use for trash, and dumped it in the living room, saying that it had all my leftover stuff in it, basically everything that I had not been able to pack into my duffel bag when I was leaving my house. It felt a little insulting that she had used a trash bag to pack my stuff, and it was way more insulting when she dumped it all on the floor of the living room, leaving me to gather it. My friend and her parents, who saw this all unfold, were scandalized. They did not appreciate my mother's behavior one bit and actually took it upon themselves to argue with her about it. They told her that, considering the fact that I was her only daughter, she should have some compassion for me instead of treating me so cruelly. They really schooled her, but she didn't take it kindly. She told them that they had no right to speak about her parenting techniques when they were the ones harboring a delinquent like me. I almost burst out laughing when she said that because I was far from a delinquent. I was literally a scholar student, and she had known that. I almost mentioned it myself, but I didn't have to, thanks to my friend who stood up for me. She told my mother off and said that she was grateful that her parents were nothing like my mother and actually had a heart. It turned into a bit of a catfight, after which my mother got really huffy and left. I was really thankful for my friend and her parents. I don't think it was really necessary for them to stand up for me, but they did, and I couldn't be happier about it. This is probably the first time in my life that I had somebody to fight for me on my behalf, and it was just really touching. But anyway, I don't think my mother will be coming back anytime soon because, after the welcome that she received yesterday, I wouldn't dare to show up around here again. And I really hope that she doesn't show up because I'm just sick of the drama now. I want to move on with my life and start a new chapter, but I can't do that if she keeps showing up again and again. So, I pray and I hope that this is the last time that I have to come across her. Update 3. Hey folks. So long time no see. I have been MIA for quite a while now. A couple of months, I think. But you can't blame me for it. It was because I was applying to colleges and trying to get into a good one with a scholarship. I had been grinding really hard, and it all paid off. I'm in my first choice school now. And yes, I'm sticking to the plan that I had come up with a couple of months ago. My friend's cousin, who was applying to the same colleges, also got in here, and we are going to rent an apartment and live together. She's a really sweet girl, and the fact that she is my friend's cousin is just a cherry on top because this way, I get to keep in touch with everyone. The last couple of months have been very difficult for me emotionally, but my friends helped me get through it all. And I can't tell you guys how thankful I am to have such people in my life. I know a lot of people who have terrible parents and families rely on their friends for emotional support, but I have tried to avoid that so far. However, now that I know how far my friends are willing to go for me, I feel like they are my family. I'm always going to be grateful for everything that people have done for me. Seriously, I don't think I could have made it this far without everybody's help, and that includes the people here who reached out to me through messages and said such supportive things to help me get through this. It's just really strange and funny how my own mother hasn't even bothered to text me even once after I moved out. She didn't even care that I had unblocked her, and she could actually talk to me. That's how little I mean to her. But you guys and my friends told me to have faith in myself because I could do it. It's really cute how literal strangers on the internet did more for me than my mother did, but anyway, that's all in the past now. I'm looking forward to having a fresh start here, and I'm really excited for what the future holds. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Parents suddenly got back in my life when someone lied to them that I married a rich boss, so I played along and taught them a lesson. I, 27F, work as a financial advisor at a top company. I have had no contact with my parents for the past 8 years. I have an older sister, Celeste, 34F, who is happily married with 2 kids. We maintain occasional communication, but we aren't that close. When I was just 19 years old, an incident occurred that made me cut off my parents for life. You see, my parents are devout Catholics, the type who take their faith incredibly seriously. Throughout our upbringing, they expected both my sister and me to strictly adhere to these beliefs and follow a life path deeply rooted in their religious values. Instead of enrolling us in local schools, they chose to homeschool us. Their reasoning was that these schools didn't align closely enough with their beliefs, so they decided to take our education into their own hands. They had a very specific vision for our futures and put immense pressure on us to choose one of the following paths: to become parents to lots of children or to pursue a life as a nun. Our parents expected us to conform to the traditional expectations of our community, and these were the only options they deemed suitable for us. My sister, who was 7 years older than me, never dated, lived at home until she got married, rarely traveled more than 10 miles from our house, and didn't participate in any group activities around our town. It was clear why she was our parents' favorite. When she was just 22 years old, they arranged her marriage to Matthew, the son of my dad's friend. At her wedding, they critiqued everything from the readings to the order of events during the Mass, even though an ordained priest officiated it. Luckily for my sister, Matthew turned out to be a great guy, and Celeste has a great life with her 2 children. Seeing that my sister had to get married at such a young age, I knew I wanted a different life than hers. She might have been content, but I didn't want to follow the traditional route. I was a young woman full of dreams, ambitions, and a passion for independence. I wanted to build a career, travel, and explore the world. My vision for my life clashed head-on with the traditional expectations my parents held dear. After I graduated from high school, I really wanted to go to college, even though my parents were dead set against it. I applied to a top university in our district and was thrilled to receive a full scholarship. But when I shared the good news with my parents, they were furious, and my dad had a complete meltdown. He began to shout at me, his words filled with disapproval and frustration. My mom, on the other hand, refused to look at me. My parents couldn't understand why I wanted to go to college when they believed I should be focusing on following the traditional path they had laid out. It was a heartbreaking moment, watching the people I love the most in the world react so negatively to my pursuit of higher education. The fallout from that argument was profound. It marked the beginning of a growing divide between me and my parents for the years to come. It was clear that pursuing my dreams was not in line with their vision for my life, and this incident was the catalyst for our eventual estrangement. Starting college opened up a whole new world for me. I learned things that challenged the beliefs my parents had instilled in me throughout my upbringing. I made new friends and gained a sense of independence that I hadn't experienced before. My parents, however, struggled to accept these changes in me. They saw my newfound independence and the influence of my college experiences as a threat to the values they held dear. Our reunions during college breaks were marked by tension and misunderstandings. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to avoid topics that would inevitably lead to arguments. The gap between our worldviews was widening, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to bridge the divide. Despite all the changes, a part of me still longed for their acceptance, but it seemed like an elusive dream. After graduating from college, I was thrilled about the prospect of finding a job and kickstarting my career. I expressed my strong desire to pursue a career to my parents and eventually move out of their house to follow my dreams. However, my parents were unhappy and didn't want me to pursue a job. They insisted that I should choose a life path that led to marriage and starting a family in line with their strong principles. Our arguments got more and more intense. Emotions were running high, and they fervently urged me to reconsider my choices. When I stood my ground and refused to heed their demands, they told me to leave their house right away. I was taken aback, shocked to see them react so angrily and abruptly over a decision that brought me so much happiness. I gathered my belongings and stayed at my sister's place for a few months until I could find a new place of my own. During that time, I made a solemn promise to myself that I would never go back to my parents' house. I wanted to live life on my own terms and achieve success and happiness outside the confines of their traditional expectations. My decision to leave and pursue a career, however, deeply hurt my parents. In their eyes, I had diverged from their expectations and disregarded their wishes for me. They responded by cutting off all communication with me, and it was as if I had been exiled from their lives. Over the years, whenever I talked to my sister, I made sure not to ask about them, and she didn't mention them to me. Now, onto the incident at hand. I had been in a relationship with my boyfriend for the past 3 years, and he proposed to me 3 months ago. We decided to have a simple court marriage followed by a small dinner party with our close friends. I'm not a fan of big, dramatic weddings, and the fact that I couldn't invite my family to the wedding was another reason for keeping it low-key. Everything seemed to be going smoothly in the following days, or so I believed, until I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it only to hear my parents on the other end. After all those years of silence, I couldn't fathom why they were calling me. It turned out that they had learned about my marriage and wanted to offer their congratulations. I hesitantly thanked them, a mix of emotions flooding over me. They continued to inquire about my life and well-being, and I answered their questions without much thought. It didn't strike me as unusual until they began to ask how it felt to be married to someone in a higher position than me at my company. Puzzled, I asked them to clarify what they meant. They went on to explain that they were delighted I had chosen to marry my boss. At this point, my jaw nearly hit the floor. I couldn't fathom why they would think I was married to my boss. They told me that one of their acquaintances had informed them about this and that they couldn't be happier. The whole time, I remained mostly silent as they continued to chatter about how proud they were that I was finally married. My dad expressed excitement about meeting my husband and getting to know him, while my mother inquired if I planned to quit my job now that I was married with the intention of focusing on having kids and keeping my husband happy. Their assumptions left me flabbergasted. It slowly dawned on me that the sole reason they had reached out to me after 8 years was their belief that I had married my boss, which in their minds elevated my status in society, and they expected me to now become a traditional wife. Their condescending tone and expectations infuriated me, but I decided to play along. I painted a picture of a life that technically was true, as I did have a comfortable life with my husband, but I added in a bunch of lies, such as having 20 housekeepers at our beck and call and living in a huge mansion with a swimming pool. My parents eagerly lapped up my story, and their excitement grew as they asked if I could arrange a meeting with my wealthy husband. Their excitement was embarrassing, considering their eagerness to reconnect with me hinged solely on the false belief that I had married my boss. While I played along and agreed to set up a meeting for the weekend, a plan was forming in my mind. I wanted to teach them a lesson, a way to make them understand the pain they had caused by refusing to talk to me for all those years just because I didn't conform to their demands. Now, they were suddenly eager to be back in my life, also they could boast about it in front of their community friends. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and I was determined to make them see the consequences of their actions. I talked to my husband about my plan, but he was unsure about it. He understood why I lied but was hesitant about starting things off on the wrong foot, since he was going to be meeting my parents for the first time. After some convincing, he finally agreed to go along with my plan. I also reached out to my boss, who was actually a woman and had become a close friend to me over the years I had worked at the company. I explained the situation to her, and she found my parents' beliefs quite amusing. I asked if we could use her house for the day, and she readily agreed. I sent the location to my parents and set up the meeting they had requested. On the day, my parents arrived at the house, believing they were meeting my wealthy boss, whom I was apparently married to. Their eyes widened as they took in the size of the house and the expansive lawn. My husband and I greeted them, and my dad shook my husband's hand with a bit too much enthusiasm. My mother hugged me and congratulated us on our marriage. My husband, though initially hesitant, played his part flawlessly. He greeted my parents with a warm smile and engaged in small talk, pretending to be the wealthy boss they believed him to be. We sat down for lunch, and my parents couldn't help but notice the team of housekeepers who brought out our plates. My dad started bombarding my husband with questions about the house, his assets, and how I had ended up with someone of his stature. Despite my irritation with the questions, my husband, to maintain the charade, spun an intricate tale about his wealth, success, and a story of how we met, all part of our elaborate act. Amidst the conversation, my dad, unable to contain his curiosity, leaned in with a twinkle in his eye and asked my husband, "You know, I've always wanted to own a classic car collection. Do you have any vintage cars around that I can check out?" My husband played along, telling my dad that he indeed had a few vintage cars. They both headed off to explore my wealthy husband's car collection, which in reality belonged to my boss. Meanwhile, my mother hung back and, in a hushed tone, confided in me. "You know, we are so happy that you married a rich man because we have been struggling to make our house mortgage payments," she admitted, her eyes filled with worry. "We are afraid that we might lose our home." I was left staring at her in disbelief as she continued, suggesting that now that I was married to my wealthy husband with a huge house and a vintage car collection, I could convince him to help out with their mortgage payments. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The only reason my parents had reached out to me after all these years was because they believed they could benefit from my supposed rich husband's wealth. They never really cared about me at all. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, and a rush of emotion swirled within me as I waited for my dad and my husband to return. I could feel the tension in the air when they finally rejoined us. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to have a candid conversation with everyone. I turned to my dad and asked him directly if what my mother told me was true. He hesitated for a moment and then replied, "Well, I didn't expect you to ever get married, let alone to a wealthy man. Now that your husband has more than enough, it wouldn't hurt to share some of this wealth with us." Both my husband and I were taken aback by the words that came out of my dad's mouth. My dad continued, explaining that he didn't have the money to pay the mortgage and he couldn't turn to his friends for help because it would damage his reputation. Seeing my parents' desperation and their assumption that they could easily gain from my husband's imaginary wealth, I decided to take my revenge to the next level. With a wicked glint in my eye, I looked at my dad and said, "You know what, Dad? We can help you with your mortgage, but there's a condition. You must first publicly apologize to me and acknowledge that you were wrong to cut off contact with me for the past 8 years. You need to do this in front of our entire family and friends at a gathering we will organize." My parents were taken aback, but it's not like they had any option. They reluctantly agreed to my terms. Over the next few weeks, I organized a family gathering where I invited our relatives and close friends to join us. My sister had no idea about all these circumstances and was taken aback that my parents had decided to reach out to me after so long. I made sure to keep my sister in the dark about my revenge plan, as I knew her strong convictions might lead her to spill the beans to my parents. On the day of the event, I was happy to meet my extended family after such a long time and meet some of my parents' longtime friends. Everyone congratulated me on my marriage to my supposed wealthy boss and kept asking if we were trying for kids. I was getting irritated with their close-minded questions, but to maintain the charade, I answered all their questions with a polite smile. Amid the cheerful chatter, my dad decided to call everyone's attention for a toast. He rose from his seat, raising his glass high, and began by expressing his happiness to be there among family and friends. He congratulated my husband and me on our marriage. My dad continued with his speech, proclaiming his pride in how I had turned my life around and was now married to my boss. He spoke about the embarrassment he had initially felt when I had expressed my desire to pursue a career and how I had supposedly brought shame to his family at the time. He declared that he had now chosen to forgive me because I had finally chosen the path that he and my mother had wished all along. The room remained still as his words hung in the air, and little did my dad know that this gathering was indeed about to take a turn he hadn't anticipated. As my dad concluded his speech, the room was filled with a respectful hush. Most of the guests believed I would rise to thank him for his words, but I had entirely different intentions in mind. It was time to reveal the true purpose of this gathering, to set the record straight and to finally address the 8 years of estrangement. With all eyes on me, I began to speak. "Thank you, Dad, for your kind words and for being here today. There's something I need to confess in front of everyone." As I spoke, a collective murmur rippled through the room. "I am married to my husband," I continued, "but he isn't the boss of my company. My boss is actually a woman and a very close friend of mine, and it was, in fact, her house that you visited earlier. The wealth and the lavish lifestyle you saw were all a charade. Someone had lied to you that I had married my boss, and I went along with the lie just to find out your true intentions. I had then insisted on having this gathering so I could reveal the truth about our family." My dad's face shifted from pride to shock, and there was a moment of stunned silence. I recounted in front of everyone how my parents had cut off contact with me for 8 years because they disapproved of my desire for independence and the pursuit of a career, but suddenly, they called me out of the blue when they believed that I was now married to my boss, who was supposed to be rich. I disclosed the real reason, that they wanted our financial help, as they couldn't afford to pay for their own house. They had reached out to me after all these years with the sole intention to leech off my rich husband and tried to convince me to ask him to pay for them. It was a shocking revelation as everyone registered the truth. I went on to clarify in front of everyone that although I wasn't married to my wealthy boss, like my parents had assumed, my husband and I did have a very comfortable life with equally high-paying jobs. I emphasized that the comfortable life we led was a result of my decision to break free from them and pursue a career rather than rushing into marriage and motherhood. The room was filled with a mix of emotions from surprise and disbelief to understanding and even disappointment. All eyes turned to my parents, who now appeared embarrassed and exposed. The guests started whispering to each other as my husband and I got up from our seats triumphantly and left the gathering. Our work here was done, and a sense of satisfaction washed over me. I had finally put an end to the facade my parents had maintained in front of their community all this time. All of this happened last week, and the aftermath has been quite revealing. I have been receiving numerous calls from people since the incident. While the majority of them applaud my courage for standing up to my parents and unveiling the truth in front of everyone, my sister and some relatives believe that I went too far, humiliating my parents in front of everyone. So, AITA for going along with my parents' lies about being married to my boss so I could take the ultimate revenge on them. Update 1. I appreciate all the responses to my post. After reading your comments and suggestions, I felt compelled to give my sister a call and share my perspective. I explained to her that I was only 19 years old when our parents kicked me out, leaving me with emotional scars that persisted for years. Their decision to cut me off was solely based on my desire to pursue higher education and choose a life different than what they wanted. It was an incredibly painful experience for me at such a young age. I made it clear that I never looked down on her choice to get married, but it wasn't the path I wanted to follow. I described the hurt I felt upon discovering the real reason my parents wanted to reconnect with me after all these years. I posed a question to Celeste, asking if she would ever treat her own children differently and cut them off if they made a decision she didn't like. She solemnly responded with a no. I pointed out that, as a parent herself, she should understand that what my parents did to me was extremely wrong, and this is why I felt compelled to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. My sister, after hearing my side of the story, expressed sympathy for the challenges I had faced. I had always kept my feelings to myself, so she hadn't fully grasped the extent of my struggle. Celeste admitted that she had no idea how I had felt all these years, and she understood now why I took the actions I did. While she couldn't entirely stand behind my revenge, she assured me that she wouldn't hold it against me. I was happy after my conversation with my sister. As for my parents, they haven't reached out to me since the incident, and I have no plans to initiate contact with them first. Given the way I exposed their truth, I can only imagine they are seething with anger. It remains to be seen whether they will reflect on their actions and attempt to rebuild our fractured relationship or continue to blame me for their actions. For now, I stand by my decision to bring these issues to light and hope that they will have learned a valuable lesson. My mother reached out to me today while I was at work. She expressed how she and my father felt humiliated in front of everyone, with my father harboring anger towards me. She continued to admonish me for lying to them, but I reminded her that I had simply played along to uncover their deceitful intentions. My mother attempted to justify their actions, explaining that they believed I was finally going to conform to their idea of a good girl by giving up my career and focusing on my family. I made it clear that I had no intentions of doing so, especially with the financial stability I had achieved and the prospect of a promotion at my company on the horizon. I reiterated that I had no regrets about my actions, as they had only revealed my parents' true facade. She also shared that some of our relatives and friends were talking about them now, and a few had expressed to my parents that what they had done to me 8 years ago was wrong. This revelation seemed to have further infuriated my dad. I didn't want to continue having this conversation with my mother anymore, as I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, so I cut off her call. I didn't want to continue having this conversation while I was trying to work. My parents were set in their ways, and so was I. I was just glad that the aftermath of the gathering was creating ripples of change, not just within our family but also within the broader circle of people who were privy to the situation. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and a lot of things have happened since then. Following the advice from many of you, I decided to begin therapy. I realized that I hadn't been dealing with the estrangement from my parents in a healthy manner, and the lingering resentment had been a heavy burden for years. While I had exposed the truth about their intentions, I didn't want to continue holding on to that resentment. Therapy has been a step towards finding a healthier way to address my past and emotions. As for my parents, they agreed to sit down and have a conversation with me largely due to my sister's heartfelt pleas. I had been initially reluctant to meet them, but my husband encouraged me to give them a chance. We all gathered at my sister's place, and I chose to remain silent as my parents took a seat to initiate the conversation. My mother started by expressing her regret for our previous encounters, which really surprised me. She admitted that she had been doing a lot of soul-searching and had realized that their actions had hurt me deeply, and she now understood the pain it had caused. My father, who had remained silent until then, acknowledged that cutting off contact with me 8 years ago had been a mistake and that they were determined to make amends. He explained how their strong commitment to their beliefs had prevented them from seeing things from my perspective. I remained cautious, opting to listen more than speak. Their words seemed to come from a place of genuine reflection, which was a positive start to our conversation. My parents shared how they had been seeking guidance from their community, which had helped them see the error of their ways. While it was challenging, I understood that it was the first step towards some form of reconciliation. My sister appeared relieved with how the conversation was progressing. She had been a silent yet supportive presence during our discussion, and her hope for a renewed bond between our parents and me was evident in her expression. Seeing her optimism gave me some reassurance that perhaps, with time and effort, our family could find a way to heal and reconnect one day. Despite the challenges ahead, it was a comforting thought that we were taking steps toward repairing the rift that had separated us for 8 long years. I will continue to attend therapy and remain open to the possibility of reconciling with my parents in the future, though I will approach it with caution. For those wondering about my husband, we are doing great in our marriage. Our married life has been blissful so far, and he always supports my decisions. I'm really lucky to have a partner who loves me so much, and I look forward to growing old with him. We are not thinking about having kids right now, but we are open to the idea. At the moment, we are just enjoying our lives and traveling the world together. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Bully became my SIL, and I gave her a pregnancy book as a prank, but it accidentally exposed her affair with my husband's friend. Now it led to a family fight, and she's being cut from the will. My husband, Charlie, 26M, my sister-in-law, Cheryl, 28F, and I, 26F, all went to high school together, and that's how we know each other. Charlie and I were obviously in the same year and are pretty much high school sweethearts. We started dating in our sophomore year and have been together since then. With Cheryl, well, it's been different. I would like to say that we are high school nemesis since she's always hated me, and the feelings have been mutual. She was 2 years older than us, so she was a senior, but that did not stop her from being a total jerk to me at all times. She was a nasty bully in high school, and I would like to say that she has not changed since then. Unfortunately for her, I was the only kid who could actually stand up to her back in high school. Everybody else was scared to even speak to her because she and her clique of friends were known for doing nasty things to anybody who decided to go against them. They would spread rumors or do things so mean that some people had even changed schools because of them. I'm not even kidding, they were that bad. However, since I had always been friends with her brother, I was not afraid to stand up to her. Even before I started dating Charlie, we had been really good friends, and I would go over to his place all the time, so Cheryl did not seem like some undefeatable entity to me. She just seemed like another kid. I think that's the way it should have been for everyone, but I don't know, man, high school is weird. Anyway, I was not scared of her, and after I started dating Charlie, I got even more bold. She had no authority over me, even in her senior year when most people were terrified of her. I guess the fact that I was challenging her status was not really good for her back then, and she ended up doing something really horrible to me. One morning in high school, I just opened my locker like I usually do, and a bunch of fish water and dead fish fell on me. I was covered in all that disgusting, slimy crap from head to toe. It was really embarrassing and humiliating, and I had to go home that day because I was so upset. I couldn't trace it back to Cheryl, but I knew that it had to be her because just the other day before that incident, we had a really nasty verbal fight in the cafeteria, and I had called her a brain-dead zombie in front of her own friends. Some of them had actually chuckled, so obviously they could not go unanswered, and she did that to me. Even Charlie knew that it had to be his sister, and because of that incident, they also ended up getting into a big fight. Even though he wasn't able to get her to apologize to me, he was at least able to get her to back off because after that incident, she and I just never spoke to each other again. Even though he and I have been together for so long, things have been the same way. However, last year, Charlie and I ended up getting married, and a few weeks after the wedding, my in-laws told me and Cheryl that they knew we had had our differences in the past, but now that we were family, we had to make more of an effort to be good to each other. Everybody had noticed how we don't speak to each other or even look at each other during events, and some nosy relatives had been questioning them about it. It was very embarrassing to tell them the truth, so they wanted us to at least try and get along. I was willing to put things in the past since it's been a long time since high school ended, and I think it's about time that we moved on. So, I told them that I was fine with it and we shook on it like adults do. But it was not like we were going to become best friends overnight, so we decided to be at least cordial to each other at events instead of just giving each other the cold shoulder like we usually did before that. For the past year, Ever since we had that discussion with my in-laws, things had been going pretty well. Whenever we would meet each other, we would greet one another and then move on with our day. I really thought that we had agreed to put our bad blood in the past, but she pulled something really mean again this year. A couple of months ago, on my birthday of all days, she showed up empty-handed at my party, which was fine. But then, while I was unwrapping everybody's presents, she announced that she was actually giving me cooking lessons and sent me an online program that she had purchased at the party itself. She said that it was supposed to be a joke, but I didn't laugh and neither did anybody else. For context, it was incredibly insulting because I had done all the cooking for the day by myself. Even though I'm not a professional chef, I've always loved being in the kitchen and cooking up new things. It's been a hobby of mine ever since I was a child, and her saying that she was going to give me cooking lessons right after she had eaten an entire meal that had been made all by me, and everyone knew that since Charlie had announced, it was just really mean. I had put in a lot of hard work and had been up since 6 o'clock in the morning that day to make sure that everything was perfect, so I really took that to heart. Even after she clarified that it was a joke, nobody really seemed to laugh, and some people just forced out a chuckle so she would drop it. But she just went on and on about it. She kept saying that she was just joking, but she really believed that I needed cooking lessons because everything that she had eaten that day was making her feel queasy, and she felt like she was going to throw up any moment. She kept joking about how everybody needed to clear the way to the washroom in case she needed to barf. By the end of the evening, she had been getting on my last nerve, and I was very relieved when she finally left. She didn't even bother to say goodbye after she had spent the entire day making jokes at the expense of my cooking skills, which are not even that bad. Charlie told me that everything that I had made was really delicious, and so did everybody else, so I don't even know what she was on about. Anyway, I had actually started to believe that she might turn out to be a decent human being after all, but after my birthday, I made up my mind that I was going to go back to ignoring her once again since she was clearly still stuck in her high school mean girl mode. Somebody like her did not deserve to be on good terms with me. Now, last week, she celebrated her birthday, and even though we're not getting along right now, she had to invite me because I had invited her to my party, and it would be really weird if Charlie went and I did not. So, just for the sake of keeping the peace in the family, she invited me, and it turned out to be a big mistake because I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. I gave her the book What to Expect When You're Expecting a Classic based on a conversation that I had overheard a couple of weeks back. For context, 3 weeks ago, Cheryl had showed up at our house, and she seemed like she was pretty devastated. She insisted that she wanted to speak to Charlie in private, so I cleared out while she and her brother were having a conversation in the living room. But she didn't know that I was standing right outside, and I was trying to eavesdrop on their conversation. Yeah, I know it's not ethical or whatever, but I was really curious to know what was going on, and I just couldn't wait for her to go and then have Charlie tell me everything. So, I just decided to try and overhear what they were talking about. I learned that Cheryl was pregnant. She did not go into the details, but she was really worried because she did not feel ready to have a baby yet, and she had come to her brother to seek advice. He told her that even if she didn't feel ready for it, she had to talk about this to her husband. And if even after that she felt like she was not ready, then they could always have the pregnancy terminated since it was still in the early stages. But he thought that speaking to her husband might help her calm down and deal with things better. So he comforted her for a bit, and then she left. After she had left, I spoke to Charlie about whatever I had heard. And both of us agreed that she had been acting really weird because even if she was not ready to have a baby, it did not make any sense for her to come to us. She had been saying certain things that almost felt like she wanted Charlie's help in terminating the pregnancy in secret, but he was not going to do something so underhanded since he believed that her husband deserved to know before she did anything. Don't get it wrong, ultimately, the decision is the woman's, but she was married, and we felt like her husband deserves to at least know. Anyway, since then, we had not heard anything with regard to her pregnancy, but I decided to play a little prank on her and give her that book. She did not unwrap the presents in front of all the guests of the party, thankfully, but it didn't matter because the book really got her into trouble, and now, there is a chance that her husband might end up leaving her. The day after her birthday, she called me up in tears and said that I had ruined her life and accused me of sabotaging her marriage on purpose. But I had no idea what she was talking about. I couldn't even get her to tell me what was going on because she was just so angry that she kept yelling at me. And after she was done, she hung up without another word. After that phone call, my in-laws called me, and they told me exactly what had happened. Apparently, she had been unwrapping all the gifts with her husband, and then that book had come up. I had even written a note and attached it to the book, saying that Charlie and I wanted to congratulate her. She hadn't announced the pregnancy or anything yet, but I just wanted to be mean to her and mess with her like she had messed with me on my birthday. I really had no idea that it would lead to such serious repercussions. That one book had led to a huge fight because apparently what I did not know was that her husband was sterile, and there was no way that she had gotten pregnant by him. So now I think that she might have been cheating, and her husband had already been suspecting her, and that book just strengthened his doubts. Now, nobody in the family knows if she had actually been cheating or not, but honestly, who are we kidding? If he is biologically incapable of having children, there is no way that she is not cheating. Anyway, that's none of my business. All I know is that she had come to Charlie and had expected him to help her out with terminating the pregnancy in secret, and now we finally know why she was so panicky when she spoke to Charlie and why she wanted to get it done secretly. Since she's a housewife and whatever she spends can be traced by her husband, she obviously couldn't let that happen if she wanted to terminate the pregnancy without him knowing. Even withdrawing cash would be suspicious because it would still be a significant amount of money that would lead to questions. Anyway, Cheryl tried really hard to convince her husband that I was just kidding, and there was nothing going on, and the book was just a prank. But he refused to believe it because he did not think that Charlie and I would make a joke like this, and there definitely had to be something to it. So he asked Cheryl to leave, and now she is living with her parents. My in-laws called me because they wanted me to speak to her husband and convince him that I had just given her the book to mess with her and convince him to talk to her and come back. Because he had already been suspecting her of cheating, and now her faithfulness had been pushed even more into question. They believe that this is my fault and that I shouldn't have done what I did, but I don't believe that. So my in-laws and I have been at odds for the past week. I think that I was perfectly justified in doing what I did because of the way she had behaved at my birthday party. I really had no idea that it would lead to such drama, so I don't think I can take the fall for that. If she didn't want trouble in her marriage, she probably should have just stayed loyal to her husband. I don't think it's fair to blame me for that, and Charlie feels the same way. He does think that the gift was a tad bit too much compared to what happened at my birthday party. But either way, he doesn't think that I need to apologize to Cheryl or even speak to her husband about any of this. My in-laws kept arguing with us, telling us that we needed to fix the situation because her marriage was at stake. And if we didn't convince her husband that this was just a joke, they might end up getting divorced, and that's not going to be good for the family. But I believe that if she had actually been pregnant when she came to speak to Charlie that day and her husband is sterile, she had definitely been cheating. And if that's the case, we don't want to defend her and get involved in any capacity. Besides, the book was just payback for the jokes that she cracked on my birthday, and I had no idea that it would lead to something like this, so it's not like I did anything on purpose. I have nothing to be sorry for, but all of them are acting like I'm the villain, the mastermind who had this entire evil plan in mind to destroy her on purpose or something. This is really weird, and now I'm doubting my decisions. Date 1. Hi, so it's been 2 weeks since I gave Cheryl that book, and up until now we have been refusing to speak to her husband, and we are going to stick to doing that in the future as well. Because from what we know, she had actually been cheating on her husband with another man. I'm not sure who, but I think it's somebody from high school, and what's worse, I think it's somebody from Charlie's friend circle. Because a couple of days ago we had a conversation, or rather, an argument with Cheryl on the phone. And she said that it was very unfair that she was being held responsible for all of this, but Charlie's friend was equally responsible, and yet he was not getting any flack and was even refusing to stand up for her. Charlie has quite a lot of married friends from high school, so we don't exactly know who she's talking about right now. But that's not even our biggest problem. My in-laws are being very difficult to deal with. They keep insisting that I need to talk to her husband before he files for divorce, which I don't think he has done yet. He just keeps saying that he'll do it, but if he really wants to separate, he should have done it already. I don't understand what he's waiting for, but anyway, they think that they still have time, and if I just talk to him, I might be able to convince him not to leave her and believe that I was just playing a prank. But I have refused to let myself be dragged into all of this drama since I don't have anything to do with it. I just want to sit back and relax, but they have been making it very difficult for us. So yesterday we had to make a very tough decision and finally block all 3 of them because they had been bothering us a little too much, and it's about to be 2 weeks. We can't keep talking to them and trying to make them understand where we are coming from. I know a lot of people in the comments section of my original post thought that it was not nice of me to do what I did, but she was literally a bully to me in high school. I don't think I have to feel bad for what I did to her and she had been cheating. But anyway, it's a free country, and people are allowed to disagree with me. Update 2. Hi, so it's been 3 days since our last update, and we were finally able to figure out who she had been having that affair with. This friend of Charlie that she had been referring to turned out to be one of his closest friends. So this is quite unexpected. Charlie had been venting to his friends about how difficult things had been for him for the past 2 weeks because his family was being very unreasonable right now, and I guess his friend just couldn't take it anymore and decided to confess everything. He contacted Charlie and told him that he had been having an affair, and apparently all of this started about 1 year ago around the time of our wedding. It was quite shocking for us, and we are still struggling to process this because Charlie is really close to all of his friends, and a betrayal like this was something we had never expected. This friend of his has been married for 3 years, and from whatever we have observed, he and his wife seem to be really in love. I know the woman personally, she can't stop talking about her husband, and now I just really feel bad for her. So we immediately decided to cut him off, and we are not telling anybody about any of this right now since we didn't want to defame him, but we are definitely not going to entertain this anymore. We even advised him to come clean to his wife instead of us because she's the one who really deserves to know the truth. Nobody should ever have to go through something like this. He also sent us proof of Cheryl cheating on her husband with him, and we have come to the conclusion that we were right to not let ourselves get dragged into this drama. Nothing good would come out of it for us, at least, so we're keeping them blocked, and that's going to be our final call. From what we know, they have not spoken to anybody else about this, and everybody's still assuming that we are on good terms with my in-laws. Charlie's relatives seem to know nothing of the drama that's going on behind the scenes. I'm guessing that they're keeping things under wraps because this entire situation is pretty embarrassing for the family, and they don't want to ruin their reputation. I guess that's a really shallow reason, but I actually appreciate the fact that they are so concerned about how people perceive them since it's helping us in keeping all of this quiet because we don't really want to deal with other people right now. One of his cousins is getting married in a few weeks, so they're going to have to attend that wedding. Given the current situation, we don't know if my in-laws or Cheryl are going to be there, but if they do choose to attend, boy, it's going to be really weird for everybody involved. Update 3. Hey. So, this update is coming almost 2 months after my last one. Nothing interesting really happened in these past 2 months. After we blocked my in-laws, we sort of forgot about them. There was no news from their end either, and they did not try to get in touch with us after we blocked them. There was no pregnancy announcement and no announcement of a divorce either, so we assumed that maybe Cheryl and her husband had been able to talk things through and patch things up. Good for them, I guess. We don't really care about what's going on in their marital life because both Charlie and I know that cheating never goes undiscovered forever, and when her husband finally finds out the truth, she'll definitely get what she deserves. And about the pregnancy, I guess she had terminated it somehow. Anyway, whatever happened, it was not our concern. So we did not bother ourselves with it and stuck to our own business until a couple of days ago when we met his family at his cousin's wedding. All of them were in attendance, including my in-laws, Cheryl, and her husband as well. Once we were there, we did not even greet each other and pretended like the others did not even exist. And obviously, the rest of the family picked up on it immediately, so they realized that something bad had happened, and immediately, people started asking us all sorts of questions. They tried to be subtle about it, but we knew that they were trying to get the gossip. However, we did not entertain anybody and just tried to keep to ourselves so that nobody would bother us. But Cheryl did not take the same approach as us and decided to blab her mouth off in spite of knowing that we knew the truth. We were going to be there in the hotel for 3 days, and it was only a matter of time until we went home, so we were ready to tolerate her. But she started saying such horrible things about us that we couldn't help but confront her about it, and unfortunately, that led to a very public showdown between our families at the rehearsal dinner. I regret the fact that it happened because it was somebody else's wedding, and Charlie and his cousin were on good terms, but now, it's because of us that one of the events got completely ruined. Of course, after that kind of scene, we could not stay any longer and had to leave before the wedding even took place. We have since apologized to her several times, and she has said that she is cool with it and stuff, but we still feel really bad about what happened. And then, on the other hand, There is Cheryl and my in-laws who did not even bother to apologize to Charlie's cousin even after being the ones who were actually responsible for creating all of this drama. At least we left of our own accord. They had literally been asked to leave by the other members of the family after we left. Serves them right, they deserve this sort of humiliation. When Charlie's cousin told him about it the day before her wedding, while we were apologizing to her on the phone, it was quite satisfying for both of us. The reason we even ended up in a fight was because she had been telling all the relatives and anybody who would listen to her that apparently we had tried to ruin her marriage by telling her husband lies about how she had been cheating and stuff, but we had been unsuccessful in trying to sabotage her marriage. Obviously, that was not true because, like we said, we don't care about what goes on in her marital life. Since her husband had proven how stupid he is by choosing to stay with a woman like that, we were even willing to let that slide because we were attending somebody else's wedding and we did not want to throw a tantrum. But then, she started claiming that we were the ones who had an open marriage and that I wanted to build a relationship with her husband, which is why I had always been so jealous of her. That was something that we could not tolerate, so we decided to confront her. On the evening of the rehearsal dinner, I brought up all the proof, the screenshots that we had received from Charlie's friend, which I had been keeping to myself for so long. But now, Charlie and I thought that it was finally time to defend myself since she couldn't just say what she wanted and get away with it. Now, her husband finally knows the truth and can no longer deny it, and whether or not he is going to make the right choice for himself and leave her is his call. But at least now, there's going to be nobody doubting us anymore. And at least we had the decency to leave on our own and did not have to be thrown out like they did. It was just a really bad couple of days, but we are trying to get over it now. The entire family knows what kind of person Cheryl is, and I just feel pity for her husband because he had chosen to patch up with her. But even that was pointless now. Now, I really hope he finds the courage to leave. And if he chooses to stay with her, then that just means that he has absolutely no self-respect or dignity of his own. She had been accusing us of sabotaging her marriage for so long we finally decided to go ahead and do it, and now she's going to have to face the consequences of trying to go out of her way to bully us. I don't know how she expected to get away with all of this. Charlie and I had literally been standing up to her since high school, and I think we have made it very clear that we're not afraid of her, so we were not going to back down now either. She should have known that. Date for. So it's happening. It's been 2 weeks since we came back from Charlie's cousin's wedding, and today, I finally heard from a couple of relatives that Cheryl had posted that she and her husband were getting divorced. She has asked everybody to respect their privacy at this difficult time in her life and has said that it's a mutual decision to part ways. What a load of baloney. I don't understand why she's acting like people were not present at the wedding and literally her entire family is not aware of what actually happened and the real reason why they're getting divorced. We will certainly be respecting her privacy. I don't think anybody needs to ask her what has happened because we all know already. Even her friends have been able to find out because Charlie decided to tell some of his friends, and then that's how the gossip started. We don't even regret what we did because she had been talking so much crap about us in the past. I don't think that we even need to feel sorry about what we did or for her. If she is going to go low, we are going to go lower. Period. She has always been a big bully, and I think we are doing the right thing because somebody needed to take her down a peg and we were glad to be able to do that. If that makes us the bad guys for some people, that's fine with us. For instance, my in-laws have decided to cut us out of their life completely and have even communicated that to Charlie by having their lawyer contact him. They said that they have decided to go no contact with us and are probably going to be cutting us out of the inheritance, too, as if we're going to hear that and immediately start begging for forgiveness. That's not going to happen. We are not sellouts who can be bought with money. And besides, they really should keep all their money to themselves since they are going to have to support their daughter now probably for the rest of her life, seeing how she hasn't worked since she graduated and has been relying on either her parents or her husband. So yeah, by all means, they can keep their money and Cheryl with themselves. We did what we thought was right, and we are not going to act like we're sorry for it. Charlie and I are perfectly content with our lives at the moment and we don't care about anybody else. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Brother tricks me into cutting vacation short with fake emergency. I took my sweet revenge by letting his kids wreck the house. Hey guys, I never thought I would be posting something like this. But the events of the past few days have been so bizarre that I just had to share. Brace yourselves for a roller coaster of emotions. I, 27F, usually work from home and frequently babysit my brothers, 33M, and sister-in-law's kids. They have 2 kids, Noah, 5M, and Susie, 8F. My brother, Mike, has a rather demanding job. He works as a structural mover and has a 40-hour-week desk job. His wife, Sandra, works as a nurse, so as you can imagine, both of them frequently need someone to babysit. For some backstory, my brother and Sandra got pregnant when I was in college and used to live at my parents' house. They used to live with us and I was forced to kind of turn into a live-in maid. My mom, who also had a job at that time, would tell me that since I was free after my classes, the least I could do for the family was look after my brother's kids. My dad didn't like it, but my mom never gave me a choice. I thought I had to look after the kids for only 5 hours until my parents were back home. But as days passed, my mom would continue to ask me to bathe the kids, feed them, or put them to sleep even when she was back home. I didn't blame her because I understood that she was tired too. But I was practically spending 7 to 8 hours looking after the kids, which was not only for free but also took up all my time. These kids were young and in absolute terror. They were extremely hyperactive throughout the day and would run around, throwing toys everywhere. If they demanded something and I didn't listen to them, they would start smashing things around the house, and I would have to clean up after them. My thing is, I am not maternal and I was also very, very young. Being the youngest sibling, I had no idea how to take care of children, especially ones who would run around screaming and throw tantrums if their demands weren't met. Obviously, I would protest several times to my brother, but he would also tell me that I was always at home and had nothing better to do anyway. This started to affect my studies, as I was too tired to complete my assignments after putting the kids to bed. One evening, I had a very important assignment to submit, but Noah and Susie wouldn't leave me alone. They would mess with my books or laptop if I took my attention away from them. I requested them several times to give me 1 hour alone, tops, and I put on their favorite kids show to distract them. But Noah started throwing things at my face, like the remote or the pillows on the couch. This would make Susie giggle and, in turn, encourage Noah to continue with this behavior. I would firmly tell him no, put whatever he threw out of his reach, and try to gently explain that we don't throw things. But Noah continued until he threw his drinking mug on my laptop. This spilled water all over the place, and my laptop was rendered useless. I couldn't believe the extent of the chaos that unfolded in a matter of seconds. Frustration and exhaustion reached their peak, and I found myself on the verge of tears. This wasn't just a mere inconvenience anymore, it was affecting my academic life and my personal belongings. Desperate to salvage my assignment and maintain my sanity, I took a deep breath and gathered them around, trying to be as composed as possible, and explained how important my studies were and the consequences of their actions. Noah remained defiant, continuing to throw things at my face. I felt beyond frustrated and felt a mix of anger and helplessness. I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and told Noah that he was on a timeout. I switched off the TV and asked him to sit in a corner, facing the wall. Noah's eyes widened, and he started to cry, but I didn't listen to him and put him on the chair. Susie, seeing this, immediately quieted down. When my brother found out about this, he absolutely lost his mind over me putting his son in timeout for misbehaving. He started yelling at me that I am not their parent, so I don't have the right to punish his kids. I sternly explained the situation to him, emphasizing the toll it was taking on my academic responsibilities and the irreparable damage done to my laptop. I told him how I needed to get my laptop repaired now because of his kids, so he needed to pay for the damages. My brother started to yell at me that I was being extremely selfish and that kids were going to be kids, so I should not blame them or him. He said I should have known better than to use my laptop in front of them. I told him that I was being forced to look after his kids, which was affecting my studies, so I had no choice but to complete my assignments while babysitting them, as no one else was willing to help me out. My brother yelled at me that we were family and this wasn't a big deal, as they were my niece and nephews. He continued to berate me, saying that if I punished his kids, then they wouldn't like me. I told him that was fine with me, as I didn't need them to like me anyway. I needed them to respect me if they were ever to be in my care. This made him angry, and he said how I was living at my parents' house for free and, other than college, had no life anyway, so I shouldn't complain about looking after his kids. He also firmly told me that I wasn't allowed to punish them. So I retorted to him that I was done with him and his kids. My brother was shocked hearing my response and tried to backtrack, but I told him that if he wanted me to look after his kids from the next day, he would have to either start paying me or look for an alternate arrangement. I continued to tell him that my services would no longer be available to him and that he was free to find someone else, since he clearly wanted some pushover doormat for his kids to walk all over, and that wasn't going to be me. Later that night, my brother must have told the rest of the family, and my mom decided to barge into my room, demanding that I apologize to my brother and his kids. She insisted that, as a sister, I should be supportive and help my brother without expecting anything in return. However, I wasn't about to back down. I calmly explained that while I loved my brother and his family, my time and efforts were valuable, and I deserved fair compensation for the unexpected babysitting responsibilities. As the tension escalated, my dad intervened, rushing to my defense. He reminded my mom that I had a right to be compensated for my time and effort. He pointed out that babysitting wasn't a small favor but a significant commitment that warranted acknowledgement. The argument between my parents continued to escalate, with raised voices echoing through the house. My sister-in-law finally stepped in. She acknowledged the validity of my point and offered to start paying me the next day, wanting to settle on $50. But I refused, saying that this was too cheap for me to look after their kids for 8 to 9 hours every day. My insistence surprised them, and they questioned what I was asking for. Undeterred, I demanded $80 per day, a figure that reflected the time, effort, and stress involved in taking care of the kids. My brother yelled at me that I was being greedy, but I replied that he could try finding someone else then. They begrudgingly agreed. I also demanded that they help pay for my laptop, which their little minion had destroyed, and my sister-in-law agreed, although my mom continued to express her disapproval. The compromise was reached, and the following day marked the beginning of a new arrangement. I was compensated for my babysitting duties. This arrangement continued until I moved out of my parents' house. At first, my brother would continue to insist that I should keep looking after the kids, but he quickly realized that it was impossible for me, as I stayed at the office for long hours and wasn't back at home until 8 p.m. He had no choice but to find another solution. I was never again troubled for looking after his kids, except on rare occasions, which I was okay with because, at the end of the day, I did love my nephew and niece. Last year, I started working from home permanently, as I got a very nice job and had the option to switch to work from home. I absolutely love my job, as it pays me well, and I can afford to live in an affluent neighborhood. When my brother found out about this, he started to go back to his old ways and would find an excuse every day to leave the kids with me. It's important to note that, at this point, I wasn't asking him for any money, nor did he ever offer me any, as I thought this was only going to happen for some time. Surprisingly, my brother wasn't thrilled about this and would go to great lengths to avoid confronting me. He resorted to leaving his kids on my doorstep in the morning and would only call me after he had safely retreated into his car, leaving me with no option but to bring the kids inside. In my attempts to reason with someone in the family, I spoke with my sister-in-law multiple times about the situation. However, she insisted that I should be more understanding and help him out, since he had been recently promoted in his job and hence was spread thin. I didn't mind looking after my brother's kids once or twice a week, but taking care of them regularly was affecting my job. I realized he wasn't going to change until I taught him a lesson. The next time he left his kids on my doorstep and called me to inform me, I lied and claimed that I wasn't at home. I threatened that I would call the police and CPS on him for abandoning his kids on my doorstep. He started yelling at me that I should just come back home wherever I was, but I told him that if he didn't turn his car back and pick up his kids, he would be answering to the police the next time. This made my brother speed back and take his kids. Later, my mom and my sister-in-law called to tell me that my brother had to miss his work, as he couldn't find an alternate option, and as a result, his boss shouted at him for missing work. My mom blamed me and told me that since I was working from home, if my brother wanted me to help him out, then it was my family duty to do so. I retorted back to her that if she wanted to play this game, then she should look after his kids because she was retired now and stayed at home the whole day. This seemed to shut my mom up. My sister-in-law told me that she was ready to start paying me like old times, but I told her that this time she would have to pay $100 instead. We bickered, but ultimately she agreed. Since then, I have continued to look after his kids only after my brother pays me up front. It has been several months now, and the children love spending time with me. A few days ago, my brother asked me if I could babysit his kids for the upcoming holidays, as he and his wife were planning on going on a trip with her friends. Usually, I would agree, but I already had plans to go to Mexico with my boyfriend and my friends, so I told him that I couldn't do it and he should ask our parents. Hearing this, my brother got upset and told me that I was young, hence I could look after the kids by myself, but our parents are old now and won't be able to keep up with his hyperactive kids. This is essentially true, as my mom has arthritis and my dad has a back problem. I told him that he should then try contacting his friends for help. He got upset and started telling me how he and his wife really needed a break and that I could always take a break later. I told him that this was my first international trip, and I was not going to postpone it for his kids. I told him that I wasn't going to cancel my plans, as I needed a break from work. He blew up and started yelling about how I should not even be tired because I just sit at home all day and don't have any kids of my own. At which point, I just hung up on him after telling him no once again. So, last weekend, I embarked on my trip to Mexico with my boyfriend and my friends. We were having an amazing time, and I was letting loose after working hard the entire year. This vacation was well-deserved. On my third day, I woke up to 8 missed calls from my brother. Getting worried and concerned for him, I called him back immediately. He picked up the call and sounded panicked, claiming that Susie wasn't doing well and was having trouble breathing. He continued to tell me that she was admitted to the hospital and it was a family emergency. You see, Susie does suffer from asthma, so I panicked hearing him, and my brain stopped functioning. My boyfriend sat up, seeing my reaction. My brother told me that I needed to come back home and be there for Susie. Feeling all stressed and anxious, I tried to get more info about what was going on with Susie, but my brother was dodgy and didn't give me clear details. With my mind all over the place torn between family and my plans, I hung up. My boyfriend and friends were supportive, suggesting we should all go back home, but I didn't want to ruin their trip. Worried, I rearranged my plans, booked the earliest flight back, and rushed home, expecting the worst. Throughout the flight home, I tried calling my parents, but they didn't pick up my calls. It was still early morning for them, so I figured they might be sleeping. I asked my brother to come pick me up from the airport, and he immediately agreed. Upon my return, I found my brother waiting at the airport, looking sheepish and nervous. I asked him to drive me straight to the hospital so I could see Susie for myself and be there for her. He hesitated before finally admitting that there was no emergency. Instead, he dropped the bombshell that he and his wife were going on their trip with their friends, as he had told me before, and he needed me to babysit their kids. I demanded an explanation, my voice edged with frustration and disappointment. He stammered, trying to justify his actions by saying he thought I wouldn't come back if he told me the real reason. His feeble excuse only fueled my anger. I felt betrayed and used. My concern for Susie turned into resentment for my brother's manipulative tactics. At that moment, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. I decided it was time to teach my brother a lesson he would never forget. No more playing games. No more falling for his tricks. I needed him to understand the gravity of his actions, the emotional toll it took on me, and the strain it put on my life. As we drove to his house, a fire burned within me. When we got there, my sister-in-law was outside with luggage, looking all sheepish. I instantly knew she was part of the plan to trick me into coming back home. She hugged me, apologized, and said there was some money for me on their nightstand. Before I could say much, my brother and his wife took off in a hurry to pick up their friends for their trip. Standing there, trying to cool off, I couldn't believe the nerve they had. I was so angry at their attempt to manipulate me and downplay the whole thing. Little did my brother know, he was setting himself up for the shock of a lifetime. I was going to take my ultimate revenge and make sure that they would never dare leave me with their children for the rest of their lives. As I stepped inside, I tossed responsibility out the window. When Noah and Susie woke up, I told them that for the next 3 days, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted in the house. Noah asked with excitement in his eyes if he could have ice cream in his bed, and I told him, why not? You're free to eat whatever you want in your bed. He rejoiced, while Susie asked if she could use her mother's expensive makeup to play dress-up, as her mother had asked her not to touch them. I told her that she was free to use whatever she wanted. When my parents called me back, I told them about what had happened. My parents had no idea about this and were shocked that my brother had gone to such lengths to force me to babysit his kids. I told them that I had a plan to teach my brother a lesson. Because of this, my mom curiously asked me what it was, and I told them of my plans to let the kids do whatever they wanted to do at home. Immediately, my mom told me that this was a bad idea and I shouldn't do this to my brother. But my dad, who was clearly angry with my brother, encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to teach him a lesson. I assured my parents that I would allow the kids to do only harmless things but would never put them in any danger whatsoever. As you can imagine, the kids went crazy, and the chaos continued throughout the 3 days. Noah, fueled by excitement, attempted to turn the living room into his personal soccer field. His kicks and throws sent objects flying, and the sound of breaking echoed through the house. Meanwhile, Susie and I tried our hands at baking. For the 3 days, I felt like a child among them and let them do whatever they wanted to do. I watched them with a mix of amusement and satisfaction every time they did something that they would otherwise never be allowed to do. Clearly, they were having the time of their lives, while the house once orderly and clean was turned upside down. This was my revenge, and it was sweet. I made sure to capture moments of their masterpieces on camera, knowing that these images would be part of the lasting memory of my brother and sister-in-law. The day my brother and his wife returned, they were completely shocked to see what had happened to the house. Their expressions went from shock to disbelief as they surveyed the aftermath. The once neat and orderly home had transformed into a realm of creative disorder. My brother and his wife went ballistic, shouting at me and demanding an explanation for the chaos they walked into. "Brother, what the hell happened here? Why is everything in shambles?" Me, "Oh, hey there. Just a little redecorating courtesy of Noah and Susie." "Brother, redecorating? Are you out of your mind? We trusted you to take care of them, not turn our home into a disaster zone." "Sister-in-law, this is unacceptable. Look at the mess. And what did you let Susie do with my makeup?" Me, "Susie wanted to use them. She's got quite the talent with makeup, don't you think?" "Brother, stop playing games. This is not what we agreed upon." Me, "Exactly. We didn't agree on anything because you left me standing in your driveway after forcing me to take care of your kids." My brother's face turned several shades of red hearing this, and he began shouting louder. He told me that I was being unbelievable right now and that they trusted me to look after their kids. I scoffed and told him that trust goes both ways, and they had tricked me into cutting my trip short so they could selfishly go on their trip. I firmly told him that the mess the kids had done could be cleaned up, and he should take this as a lesson to never mess with me ever again. My sister-in-law demanded that I repay her money back, as I had de-estroyed the house. So I told her that I took care of the kids for 3 days, and her $150 was the least she could give me for the 3 days I had looked after her kids. I told them that I was not going to let them push me around anymore. My brother started to say something, but I stopped him. "You know what? This is the last time you will ever see me. I am done being manipulated, taken for granted, and treated like a doormat. The next time you try to dump your kids on me, I will involve the police and get a restraining order on you. Consider this the end." Their faces froze, registering the gravity of my words. I turned around, gathered my bags, and walked out, leaving behind a house in disarray and a family stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Since then, my brother has been calling me, complaining how he and his wife are now stuck cleaning around the house, and the least I could do was apologize to her for being a brat. He is blaming me for everything and continues to say that he didn't do anything wrong by calling me back for my trip. So, AITA for teaching my brother a lesson and giving him an ultimatum? Update 1. My mother reached out to me in just a few hours, as I had expected her to do so. She demanded that I call my brother and sister-in-law and apologize to them for being so harsh. She continued to tell me that she knew that this would happen, which is why she had tried to discourage me. She told me the only way I could fix things was if I gave back the $150 along with an apology. I was floored hearing my mother supporting my brother again when clearly he was at fault. I wanted to cry when she continued to berate me without considering my feelings. I cut the call short and haven't picked up her call since. I have talked with my boyfriend regarding all this, and he believes that I need to take a break from my family, at least for a short while, so I can sort out my feelings. I think he is right, and I plan on taking a break from everyone. Update 2. Surprise, my sister-in-law reached out to me with an apology. A few days after the chaotic incident, my sister-in-law reached out to me with an apology. In a subdued tone, she admitted her mistakes and expressed genuine remorse. She acknowledged that she shouldn't have let her excitement for the trip cloud her judgment, allowing my brother to manipulate and lie to me. She realized the unfairness of taking me for granted and letting her desires blind her to the consequences. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she offered a sincere apology, recognizing the impact of their actions. She then started to plead with me not to punish the kids for their mistakes, emphasizing that they love spending time with me and hoped I would reconsider my stance on babysitting them in the future. However, I remained firm in my decision. I assured her that I wouldn't be babysitting the kids again, reiterating my unwavering stance on the matter. Despite her hesitation, I decisively rejected the idea, refusing to be swayed by manipulation or guilt trips. I stood firm on the boundaries I had set. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, I do believe that actions speak louder than words, hence, she or my brother shouldn't depend on me in the future for any babysitting duties. The call concluded with a mix of emotions, but I was glad that she did apologize to me. Update 3. It's been a month since I shared the story about what went down with my brother. Things have improved a bit since my sister-in-law apologized. My brother kinda said sorry too, but it wasn't really heartfelt. My dad had a serious talk with him and scolded him for messing with me. I haven't responded to his apology yet. On a brighter note, my boyfriend surprised me with a spontaneous trip to make up for the fact that I had to cut my last trip short. We took a road trip to the countryside, and it turned out to be exactly what I needed. The scenic views and peaceful atmosphere helped me unwind from the chaos of the past month. It felt like a breath of fresh air, a much-needed break from the drama. During the trip, my boyfriend and I explored and enjoyed local cuisine. The laughter and shared moments created new memories, overshadowing the recent family drama. I can't help but feel grateful for the thoughtful gesture. It wasn't just about the trip, it was a symbol of understanding and support. It made me realize that even amid family issues, there are people in my life who genuinely care about my well-being. I still have my brother's half-hearted apology lingering in the back of my mind, but for now, I am choosing to focus on the positive moments and the kindness that surrounds me. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Fiancé ghosted me, married my dumb cousin, and my aunt rubbed it in my face. Now he's broke and jobless. She kicked him out, and I took all our savings. I, 28F, have been engaged to Ron, 27M, for a year. We had known each other since our college days. We were friends but not very close. We started dating after our college days, and since then we've been together for 4 years. Last year we got engaged. We held a small ceremony with close family and friends. My aunt was also invited. My aunt and her daughter, Lucia, 24F, have been living with my grandparents since her husband passed away a few years back. Ever since she attended my engagement and was impressed by my ex's charm, she told everyone how handsome and rich he was. She couldn't stop praising him. It was unusual because she hadn't been so fond of me. Her daughter, Lucia, is drop-dead gorgeous, but she is dumb as a stone and always compared the two of us in all aspects. I was good at studies, though she was 4 years junior to me in academics, and would compare our report cards and remark how her daughter was better than me. The funny part was when she compared her 8th grade card with my 12th grade and declared her to be better than me. Jokes on her. Lucia couldn't pass high school. Ron and I were planning our wedding in October because I had to visit the UK for a summer program. Everything was fine between us when I left in June. We used to talk once a day because of the time difference. It was a 10-week program. 2 weeks into this, it started getting cold between us. I asked him what was the matter. He didn't say anything straight, just stalled, saying he was stressed due to work. I thought the distance had taken over our feelings. I didn't take it seriously because it was not a new relationship. I thought of sorting out the matter after going back. A week before my program ended, he ghosted me. Damn, it felt so childish to me. I mean, whatever the thing is, he could have confronted it, but he chose the easier way and vanished. There's something about me, call it ego or whatever, I don't run behind people. I'm not that good of a person. No matter how much I get hurt, I don't put my guard down. His ghosting felt like a gut-wrenching, yet I didn't show up at his door. Yes, I was in my delusional world that he would come knocking at mine. He did instead. My aunt showed up at my door with a wedding invite. I got to know he was getting married to my cousin, Lucia. WTF? In the age of emails, she comes up with a printed copy of the invite. She wanted to witness my disappointment firsthand. That was one of the very few moments in my life where I was caught off guard. I was in shock. It was more of how could he fall for my cousin, who barely can pay for her meals. But soon enough, my aunt helped me with the answer. She goes, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I can understand your pain. But what can we do when people fall out of love? Maybe he couldn't handle the distance. Don't be mad at your sister." Ron was the one who reached out to Lucia for a coffee because he had nothing else to do after work. You know how gorgeous my princess is. You can't blame Ron for falling for her. I looked at her with red, teary eyes. You see, usually, I don't entertain my aunt and cut her off in between. But this time, I was so shocked that I couldn't say a word. All I did was stare at her and take her mean, sugar-coated insults. She said, "Trust me, honey. I love you as much as I love Lucia." I yelled at her when she told me about Ron, but he came down at my place and politely confessed his profound love for Lucia. You know how humble and sweet a man he is. My heart instantly melted for him when he went down on his knees and asked for Lucia's hand for me, like an old-school gentleman. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I imagined Ron doing everything she described. She tried to hug me, but I blocked her. I wiped my tears and stood up, saying I had something to attend to, so please leave. She was like, "If you're intending to contact Ron, don't do that. He has blocked you." I made him do so. It doesn't look good that my son-in-law contacts his ex, you know? I said, "You and your son-in-law? I've got a lot to do in life than poaching others, man." She stood up and said, "Don't be disheartened, my baby. I can understand it would be tough for you to get another man at this age and with these looks, but don't worry. There are plenty of divorced men looking out for a second love in life. I'm sure you'll find one such good man." I yelled, "Get out." I badly regret losing my composure and giving her the satisfaction of watching my vulnerability. But that's okay. We all have weak moments in life where we just can't hold ourselves together. This news was way more painful than the ghosting thing. I'm not saying it would have been easy if he cheated with any other woman, but it would be a lot better than this. I would have cut him off and been rest assured to never meet him again. But now, who knows? My aunt can show up any time to rub her daughter's prize on my face. Everyone in the friends and family knew about me and Ron. Now I feel stupid for having a pompous engagement now that he's getting married to Lucia. The story is evident to everyone as to what has happened in the background. My aunt has been weaving a different story that Ron found solace in Lucia because I was too headstrong and egoistic and I prioritized my career over him. She told everyone that Ron didn't want me to go to the UK for the summer program, yet I went there and stopped talking to him. She went as far as saying that Ron suspected me of hooking up in the UK. He heard some guy's voice from the background whenever he called me and stuff. I've never been in touch with most of my relatives after moving out from home. Even as a teenager, I was distant from them because I didn't like their small talk. Hence, it was easier for my aunt to sell off her lies. It feels so terrible. I know all those golden lines, what happened for the best. I got rid of the trash. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But you know what? When you're in the middle of the dark phase, it's just impossible to sail through it, even though you know everything is going to be okay in a while. Update 1. Hello. And thanks for cheering me up in my original post. I've been intending to update this for a long time. I was like, the day I don't feel anything for my ex, I'm going to make an update. And here we are today. It indeed got better, and there's a cherry on the cake. Wait for that. That phase was really dark and long. Not that I didn't go through a breakup before, but this was horrible because he was my fiancé. My mom stopped by for a week, and it kind of helped me have her by my side. However, I felt sick to my guts the moment she left. I was with Ron for so many years that every place brought back his memories, enough reason for me to leave the city. I applied for jobs in the UK and got a very promising one in Leeds. Nothing like it. I packed my bags and left. Pro tip for me: if anyone is struggling to move on from a broken past, nothing heals better and faster than a change in scenery. Yes, only if your situation allows. I understand not everyone has this leverage to move out from their base. See if you could. Anyways, moving to Leeds felt like I was reborn. I was amazed at how quickly I moved on. It took a better turn a few days ago when my mom called and asked me if Ron was unemployed. I said, yes, he was, not unemployed, but he left his job a year ago to pursue his passion for writing. There's an interesting thing. Ron wanted to be a writer, and he was writing stuff here and there but was not getting anywhere amidst his full-time job. So, I stepped up to help him build a career around writing. We had his agreement that I would work full-time while he would set up a ground of entrepreneurship, and eventually I would leave my job and we both would work to set up our own enterprise. Sounds fascinating, right? Yes, but Mom laughed so hard when I told her these details. She said that Aunt came to her the other day and screamed, "Why didn't you tell me that Ron is a bum?" Mom was confused because the last she knew he was working and quite well off. Mom said she had no idea about this. Aunt told Mom that Ron was insisting Lucia take up a crash course, which would land her a better-paying job so that she could bear the household expenses for both of them. He wanted to execute that plan with Lucia. Little did he know that my aunt got him married to Lucia so that they both could live off his income. Well, joke's on both of them. The last I remember, Lucia worked part-time as a receptionist in a restaurant, taking table reservations. Not sure if they both would be able to live off a receptionist's income. I might be sounding mean to look down upon Lucia for her profession. Well, I'm not, or maybe I am. I don't care. I wish I could see the disappointment and anguish on my aunt's face when Ron's truth came out. There is one more layer to this. Aunt was a mistress to Lucia's dad, and when he died, his legal wife kicked them out of the house. That's why Aunt was living with my grandparents. They are feeding on the pension and money of my grandparents, and sometimes my dad and my uncle help them out financially. Lucia has always been a dimwit kid. She doesn't like to work. Neither is she capable of it. She failed twice in high school and ultimately dropped out. That receptionist job she got was also because of my uncle. He referred her to his friend's restaurant. Nowadays, even a receptionist job needs a high school diploma. If you think karma is served, not yet. After I was done sulking, it was time for action. When he was still at his job, we together bought a trust fund that we intended to use later for our business. I had all the access to that trust fund because I managed our finances. I was putting money in that every month. I would say 20% of the money in that trust fund was his. I liquidated all that fund when I got to know about his cheating. He has no clue that the fund doesn't exist now. He is still delusional that he would get the money from there because he told Lucia that once my anger subsided, he would reach out to me and get his 50% of the share from the trust fund. Delusional. If you think I'm a fraud, well, I am not, because I had spent an equivalent amount of money on Ron on his bad days. After Ron left his full-time job, he was struggling hard to get any writing gigs. It was difficult for him to make ends meet, so I gave him access to one of my spare bank accounts where I was putting some money for his monthly expenditure. I supported him through all my means. I think what I did is fair. Had we been married, I would have got alimony. This trust fund was close enough because we were almost married. Now, I'm wondering about his future plans of entrepreneurship. He has no savings and no job. Not my problem anymore. Update 2. Here's the next update. This Christmas has been delightful. I got the satisfaction of seeing the disappointment on my ex's face. I went home, and my ex came knocking at my door. He was here asking for his trust fund money, and that too, he demanded 50% of it. I said, "Which money?" He said he had put his savings in the trust fund, which we intended to use for our business. I said, "Oh, that trust fund? I liquidated it." He flipped out. "How could you do that? We had kept that money aside for our business. Now what are we going to do about it?" I said, "Excuse me, there is no we here. You are my brother-in-law, and the person you should be calling we is right across the street." He took a deep breath and said, "Look, I know I have hurt you, and you have all the right to be mad at me, but I need that trust fund money. I don't have a job. The client for whom I was writing has offboarded me. I'm hunting for another client. Lucia doesn't earn enough for both of us. I haven't paid the rent for the last 2 months, and if I default for 1 more month, the owner has threatened to lock me out. Please understand my situation." "Why the hell should I understand your cheating ass? Remember what you did to me." He said his cheating doesn't give me the right to whisk away his money. I screamed, "Your money? You owed only 20% of the trust fund." He yelled, "Whatever, I want it back." I said, "Remember the money I gave you for your monthly expenses? What about that? I have taken your 20% share of the trust fund and made it even." He was struck now. He was calm and said, "I had spent that money on him as his girlfriend, so I shouldn't claim it. In that logic, he gave me the trust fund money when he was my boyfriend, so he shouldn't ask for it either. He threatened to sue me for eating up his share." I said, "If he does that, I'll also press the charges of card theft because he used my debit card to withdraw the money from his monthly expenditure." I reminded him that if we sit and calculate who owed how much, then he might land up in debt, so he better watch his tone and suck up the truth. He stormed out with a bitter face. If this encounter was not enough, my aunt and Lucia showed up at my parents' house, looking for me. They were here to ask me about the trust fund money. Ron had told them that I took away a share of the money, and now he has nothing left. He was broke. I said it was none of their business and that I would not discuss my matter with them. Lucia still pestered me to tell her because her future was at stake. I said, "This concept is beyond your understanding, so better stay away from it." My aunt yelled at me for insulting Lucia and said that I should lower my ego while talking to Lucia because she's more accomplished than I am because Ron left me for her. My dad came to my room upon hearing my aunt's voice and mellowed her down. On seeing him, she said she was casually talking to me about his distress. Dad said he heard everything, and if she dared to raise her voice again at me, he would cut off all financial aid he had been giving to her. He said he regretted not meddling in my business earlier because they gave my aunt a free hand to humiliate me, but not anymore. Dad told her, "If Lucia is so accomplished, then let her help Ron in running the house and save themselves from getting locked out of the house." Apparently, Aunt and Lucia didn't know about Ron's poor financial condition and about the default in rent. She was shocked. She started sobbing in front of my dad, saying that Ron had ruined Lucia's life because he could not provide for her. She was worried about where they would live if the owner actually locked them out. She requested I release Ron's share of the trust fund so that he can put his life together. My dad said he was proud of me for standing up for myself and laughed at Aunt for going behind my back and wooing Ron for Lucia. She should have thought about the consequences before pimping out her daughter, and started crying that she did everything to secure her daughter's future. My aunt changes color at lightning speed depending on the situation. She said, "Lucia doesn't have a father to have her back like you have. Neither is she educated like you to earn for herself, so I have to look out for her. I thought Ron was the one who could take care of my daughter, but see, my poor girl's fate betrayed her." Lucia broke down at this and said, "You could have told me that Ron was unemployed, but you let your sister marry a bum. But I'm not blaming you for that. You have your own reason for hiding the truth." My dad stood up and asked them to leave. They were the ones who went behind me to poach my fiancée and then came to my house to rub her daughter's hunt on my face. Now, when things are falling apart, she is blaming me for hiding Ron's truth. WTF? While they were leaving, I said, "Don't worry for Lucia. There are plenty of sugar daddies out there waiting to shower love on girls like Lucia. I'm sure you both can find many." That was very mean of me to say this. Told you I am not that good of a person. By the way, she was the one who started this humiliation when she came to rub her daughter's wedding invite on my face. I don't know what happened after that. I wished I recorded her when she was calling Ron a bum. He deserved to know what his MIL and wife think of him. Nonetheless, if she could call it in front of us, she could do it on his face. It feels satisfying. Update 3. Ron mailed me saying how badly he is screwed up. He borrowed money from his friend to pay the due rent, but he defaulted again because his client delayed the payment of his writing gig. The owner gave him the notice to vacate the house. He requested my aunt to let them live for a few months, but my grandparents refused to let them in. Ron didn't know that the house was not of my aunt. They lied to him that it was Lucia's house, and my grandparents were living with them, when the truth is otherwise bunch of liars. He said Lucia also lied about her education and her job. She told him she was working as a manager in the restaurant. She lied to him about her salary as well, and that's why he thought he would follow the business plan with Lucia. I'm amazed at how could he not sense Lucia's dumbness on their dates. I mean, did he even talk to her before getting married? Or was it just the booty call? He said he has given up on his dreams of writing and is seeking for a job relevant to his earlier experience. I ignored his email. A few days later, he mailed me again, saying sorry. His first email didn't have sorry in it. He said he was sorry to betray me, and that's why his life has been so badly screwed. He said my aunt had taken Lucia with her and said she could not let her daughter live with a loser. For the aunt I know, she is well capable of doing this, and Lucia would follow her mom like a puppet. She has no mind of herself. I'm sure she didn't love Ron. She might have followed her mom's plan to allure Ron and get him. It makes me wonder the power of beauty. No matter how much we advocate gray matter, beauty does have an edge over all the intelligence of the world. The best of the minds fall for beauty, isn't it? However, I'm in no mood to forgive Ron or get back to him. He is apologetic now, but he is a cheater, and once a cheater, always a cheater. His life might be in a disaster, and some of it may be because of me, trust fund thing, but I don't regret it a bit. I was fair to myself. He made a wrong choice, and he has to abide by it. I responded to his email, telling him not to contact me ever again, and blocked him. I wanted to tell him that once he got a better-paying job, my aunt would drop Lucia at his place, but why would I pacify him when he crushed my soul by cheating on me with my cousin? His misery is no more than a gossip to me, which I discussed with my mom with a good laugh. She said she was now feeling satisfied that karma had knocked down all of them. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Found out my wife had an affair with her coworker, and when I caught her, she tried to fool me. I'm a 37-year-old male. My wife, Cass, is a 32-year-old female. We were married in 2018. We met a few years before that through business because we are in the same industry. I love her more than everything. The reason I married her was because I had major turmoil in my life, and she stuck with me. We had a small break before we got back together. When we started talking again, I found out my father was indicted in a cold case murder. He was going to jail. The terrible part is my father had custody of my nephew, ELFPO male, at this time. I was the only family member able to take him on because my brother was currently in jail. Through this, she said we would do this together. I knew I wanted to marry her right then. My wife was told she more than likely was not going to be able to have kids, but I wanted to marry her anyway because of how much I loved her. I always wanted to be a dad but was willing to sacrifice that because of how much I loved her. During this terrible time, I wanted something solid. We were best friends and had made it through so much. I felt like we could tackle the world together. I asked her to marry me on a weekend, and then we found out she was miraculously pregnant the following week. We went from talking again to a family in no time. Looking back, I wanted to have a long engagement to make sure we worked through any issues from our break. But instead, we were thrown right in. We were married in 2018, and everything was great. I loved her very much, and our marriage wasn't perfect, but I was loyal to her, and she was my ride or die. Fast forward to 2021. We moved states because I had to take a new job due to our business being derailed by COVID. This new job required me to travel a lot, and she wanted to be close to her family for help with our 3 kids. We had 2 beautiful girls on top of my nephew. Cass quit her last job and worked locally with family. She hated being home because her family was full of constant judgment, and when help was needed from them, it was like pulling teeth. It honestly pulled us down and reminded her why she left the first time. Her old employer asked for her back, but this job was 4 hours away. Without really discussing it too extensively, like a couple should, it required her to be gone during the week. She was going to work this into a remote position, But as she started the job, she began to like being away. She left me to take care of the kids, which I love them, but it was hard. I felt abandoned. I still traveled 2 days a week and had to rely on and deal with her family, not to mention all the duties of taking care of 3 kids. She would come home on weekends and it would be fight after fight. I wanted and needed help, but when she came home, she would hardly want to hang out with us, instead going out with her brother and friends. All I wanted was help. The business we are in is primarily male. She started being distant, and we were hardly intimate anymore. Last summer, we moved to where she was working. Her time there changed her. She is a beautiful, tall blonde and constantly gets hit on by her male coworkers and customers. She had a coworker, Seth, 33-year-old male, who I knew before from being in the same industry. I liked him. I never felt threatened by him because all dealings with him had been good. He put out there that he was a moral man as far as I could tell. I did not feel threatened, for he was not Cass's type. After we moved, I tried everything I could to make Cass happy. Listening, emotionally supportive, complimenting, bearing any household task, anything to try to make an effort. Nothing I did was ever good enough. We finally got to a point where we both agreed, for us to make it, therapy was our best option. We agreed on individual therapy first. She found an online therapist, which I thought wasn't the best, but it was what she wanted to do. One day, she asked me what my plans were later in the week. I told her I didn't have to travel and would be working from home. She asked if I could work at a coffee shop that day because she wanted space. She wanted to work from home that day and had a therapy session. I said sure. We have always shared our location due to safety. A few times in recent weeks, her location would randomly turn off. She said it was an issue with her phone. The day she had her session in the afternoon, she made sure my location was working and called me to make sure. I felt it suspicious. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said yes. I turned off my location. 15 minutes before her session, she asked why it wasn't working. I told her my phone must have the same issues as hers. She asked if I was still at the coffee shop, and I said yes. She said I could come back in 2 hours. My spider sense went off. I left the coffee shop. Since I could see her location was not at the house, I drove back and parked down the street. 5 minutes later, I saw Seth and Cass both get out and walk into the house. It was obvious that she wasn't going to therapy. I waited for 10 minutes as my heart beat uncontrollably, the thought of what I would find in there and how it would ruin me. But I had to know. I walked in, and no one was in the living room. There is no reason a man that Cass works with should be in any other room. I made it to our bedroom and opened the door to find them both about to do the deed. He was fully bare on my bed, with her almost there. I looked at her and yelled, "Is this a new type of therapy?" Both of them had utter shock on their faces. She ran after me, trying to say it isn't what it looks like. I broke down. I didn't cry, but my body and mind took over. My world was turned upside down. Seth exited as quick as he could as Cass made sure she was between us. I tried to leave, but Cass was physically blocking me. I'm traditional in the aspect where I would never physically hurt a woman, but a relentless version of Cass came out. All I wanted to do was leave. I was a former defensive lineman and used my old moves to evade her without having to get physical. Once I got to my car, she blocked me from leaving. In order to leave, I had to trick her like I wanted to talk, but I sprinted to the car and took off. I think she broke a nail trying to grab the door handle as I was speeding away. I'm flushed with anxiety. I don't understand how she could have done this after all I did was try to make her happy. The picture of that man naked on my bed is haunting me after he tried so hard to come off as a good man. Date 1. While I was driving away, I probably should have pulled over at some point because I was hyperventilating and couldn't get my heart rate down. However, the first thing I thought of were my kids. I immediately drove to their school and picked them up. At this point, I was getting bombarded with calls and text messages from her. I decided to block her. My only thought of the situation was, where are my kids, and are they going to be okay? Even with what I just saw, I still was thinking about what was best for them. Under my supervision and control, I could make sure that they were okay. I needed them now more than her, and she could spend the weekend by herself, wallowing in what she has done. Once I got the kids, I drove to a family member 2 hours away. This happened on a Friday, and I was able to take a weekend and have time with just me and my kids. During this drive, I started to get calls from her mother, who was our mediator. The only thing I told her to say was, "The kids are safe." I told her not to share anything else about our situation or where we were going. It was Cass's choice to break up the family. I felt she didn't warrant that info. Mother-in-law agreed and told Cass the kids were safe. I was emotionally dead inside. The only thing that brought out positivity were the kids. We did a bunch of activities through the weekend and had a great time together. They wondered where their mom was. I told them that this was a weekend for Daddy to spend time with them. I still wanted to put Cass in a positive light and not be spiteful toward their mother. Kids eventually make their own mind up. I found out later that she was worried because of the emotional state that I was in and that I would somehow hurt the kids. Goes to show how much she really didn't know me anymore, because I would never do anything like that. Starting to see some of the dialogue that she was putting out there in order to sway certain opinions. To add context, though I loved her very much and wanted to make her happy, she had narcissistic qualities about her. When I was sick, she would have been more sick. If I had a problem, her problem had to be bigger. Cass decided to adopt my nephew with me, but I believe that this was a tactic to lock me down. At that point in my life, I was very successful and had a lot of good qualities that I believe someone else would want. During our break, she realized this and saw this as an opportunity. Due to my upbringing, I have some insecurities about myself, but from what other people say, they think that I am a good person and always try to make everything better. That's always who I try to be. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect or that I didn't have my problems or issues. I most certainly did, but I always tried to make everything better. My nephew became a problem to her. Since we jumped into being a family with finding out that she was pregnant and adopting him at the same time, I believe she had some animosity because some of her life was stolen from her. Their relationship was always rocky. He was never right in anything that he did. I think that he has some underlying issues now because of their relationship. I was constantly having to defend him for just being a kid. He did have some issues that I do believe were valid, and we got him the appropriate care. When you get a kid into the mental health system, it's always slow and rocky because everything is trial and error for kids so young. I did my best to see all sides of the situation, but it didn't matter, and I was usually stuck in the middle. To give you an update on Seth, he is married with a few kids. He does work in the industry. I am not sure what I'm going to do yet. I still can't help but think of the person that he put off and finding him in my bed like that. I do know that he has blocked me on all social media, so I'm assuming that he's doing damage control to make sure that his wife doesn't find out. However, in the 10 minutes in the car before I walked in, I found out a way to contact her for a worst-case scenario. The power of completely ruining somebody scares me, but if that's the right thing to do, then it's what I will do. Ruining somebody has its advantages and disadvantages, but also seeing him potentially get away with this is also going to be tough to do. I would also like to let everyone know, for my own benefit and to protect myself, that I did record the whole situation on my phone. I have unblocked my wife and have had very limited contact. As I told her, I don't really want to talk this way. I let her talk to the kids on the phone so she can let them know that they are missed. I'm planning on having a face-to-face meeting with her and writing everything down that I have an issue with, letting her know what a lot of you were saying, just take it to a lawyer, and I think that is ultimately what's going to happen. However, I believe this one-on-one is going to give me closure and a direction moving forward. The other advice that a lot of you have given is to get a paternity test on my kids. I can say with the utmost certainty that these are my children. They look just like me, the timelines check out, we have the same birthmark between the three of us, and the color of hair isn't something that could be questioned. In the beginning, I truly believed that she did love me or love the idea of me. I don't believe that she would have screwed that up. But just for all of our sakes, I still might do the test to leave no stone unturned. Some of my close friends that have given me great advice in the past have told me that I'm doing the right thing by not acting rash with the video. I could totally ruin her and Seth, but what would I do to my kids? Regardless, I'm going to be able to put some stipulations on how we move forward one way or the other, and I'm trying to figure out what those are. I'm not trying to get back with her. I'm trying to find the best way to move forward for the kids. Update 2. I have many people calling me an a-hole because I didn't react emotionally, but I always found the best revenge to be methodical and with a lot of thought. I finally had to sit down with Cass. Both she and Seth had gone into defense, trying to protect themselves as much as they possibly could. I have the upper hand and also know exactly what I'm going to do. First off, I did an at-home paternity test. Both of the children are indeed mine. There was some doubt based on what the Reddit community was saying, but I got the truth. When I arrived at the house, the first thing that Cass wanted to do was give me a hug. I denied her. She doesn't get to keep playing on my emotions anymore. I honestly felt nothing. As she began to cry, I wanted the upper hand in a conversation, so I let her go first. She began by telling me how sorry she was and how she can't get the image of my face when I walked in on her with Seth. She said she had time to reflect on all of the good things and strides I made recently and realized that she was going in a different direction in her head. No matter what I did, the situation made her realize what she did having me as a partner. We haven't been intimate as of late. She told me that she convinced Seth that this would be a one-time thing to see if she could be with somebody else. She wanted to make sure that it wasn't just her and her emotional state on why she couldn't be emotionally and physically with me. I didn't believe this for 1 second. She knew I had the video and asked me what I was going to do with it. With us being in the same industry, there were a lot of implications that could happen. It would ruin their reputations there. I realized what she was saying earlier was a ploy. Cass, having those narcissistic tendencies, made me realize that's what she was worried about the whole time, and goes my plan. I relayed to her that I don't believe her. Actions speak louder than words. Her asking what I was going to do with the video told me what she was really worried about. She asked me not to implicate Seth in his job because he had a family. It was her decision, and she convinced him to bring him over and test to see if she could be intimate again, which is complete BS. I said, the moral man he is, he should have known better. I understand what it's like to have a relationship with somebody at work, but there are lines you don't cross. He was in that bed too. I was pissed and realized how little of a priority I was again. With my kids in mind, I need to make sure that I'm taking the correct steps to protect myself and them. I told her immediately that Seth needs to find another job. With our industry being very small, he should be able to find one very easily due to the experience that you need. If he doesn't do this, this video is going to go to his work and to his wife. She deserves to know. She said she couldn't ask him to do that. I told her that this decision was both of yours, and how am I supposed to just let everything go without consequences? The world doesn't work like that. She said that her and Seth are not on speaking terms because of what happened. He blames her for what happened. I told her, you'll see him at work. I'm sure you can pull him aside. Not my problem. I then began to tell her that she needs to go find a place immediately. She said she had no place to go. I said, not my problem. I would take the kids to my other family members, but their school is close and can't take them that far. There's no immediate family where we live. I told her that I have the upper hand due to the evidence. Why would I be the one that would be forced to leave, as well as Seth getting to keep his job and his marriage intact? I did nothing wrong. I didn't deserve this. She said she didn't know what to do. I said, that's not my problem. I explained that her narcissistic tendencies affected me mentally and emotionally through our relationship. She needed to hear this because narcissistic people think they never do anything wrong and gaslight. She needed to hear everything I had to say in order to become a better person and mother to our kids, but that's the extent of our relationship moving forward. I told her, I'm not your friend anymore. Don't bother me with any of your BS. In the past, she knew I was a problem solver and would use her problems to try to gaslight me. I asked her to leave after, as she had no response. I planned to let Seth's wife know, and I want Seth gone from the company first in order not to affect my kids too much. I don't want Cass's job to be in jeopardy. However, if they don't do what I want, then that's their choice and they know the consequence. I have contacted a lawyer. We meet in the middle of the week. He will have it all in front of him, even things from the past from our relationship. There will be another follow-up as things progress. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Golden child sister stole my BF behind my back, and my parents gave her my grandma's earrings meant for me as family inheritance, so I cut my toxic family off. This story is so weird. When I, 27F, was 20 years old, I was in a FWB situation with a guy, now 40M. It was messy. We were on and off for almost 5 years. He was always clear he wasn't ready for a relationship, and I was always clear I was madly in love with him. Every time I got tired of the situation and wanted to leave, somehow he convinced me to stay because love is free. We had so much time together, he wasn't ready for commitment. I asked my sister, now 42F, for advice, and she gave me some crappy advice like, make him compromise, leave stuff at his place, and basically turn him into a boyfriend until it was too late for him to say no. I never managed to do that because I wanted him to love me as much as I loved him, not trap him. During the last night I spent at his place, he said he wanted to try something more serious with me, talked about some dates he planned, etc., only to ghost me forever. It was hard. This was the first person I loved, and he treated me like crap. 6 months passed, and my sister came home. We both lived with our parents, saying she wanted to introduce her brand new boyfriend. She had a ton of boyfriends, but she said this was the one. It was a dinner only with my parents at our home, so I was excluded and expected to just go out or chill in my room. The day came, and while they were dining, I ordered a pizza. I came downstairs only to find the guy I was with 6 months prior dining with my parents and sister. I was shocked but paid for my pizza and went to my room again to cry. After dinner was over, I confronted my sister in front of our parents and begged her not to be with him, to be loyal to me, her little sister. There was no way she didn't know who he was. I had shown her pictures of him, his social media, where he worked, and she even knew where he lived. They never met because he didn't want to meet my family and never introduced his. But she knew who he was, and she excluded me from that dinner because she knew. She said they met by chance after we stopped seeing each other. She knew how hard that breakup was, how painful it was to not even have closure. He just stopped replying, not even blocking me, just left me there wondering after 5 years. She knew that during those 6 months, I was still hurting. I know it was my fault. I was too naive and thought that if I stayed long enough, he would be ready for the relationship I wanted and would learn to love me. Stupid, I know. She defended herself, saying it was a coincidence. The chemistry was there. She loved him, and she wasn't going to lose the love of her life. This stuff only happens once in a lifetime. When I was in my early 20s, I would believe that. However, now I know that there are 8 billion people in this world. There's no one love of your life. You can find the love of your life multiple times if you look for it. My parents sided with her and said I should get over it since we never had a real relationship, and a year had passed. I've been excluded from multiple family gatherings because he would be around, and my family thinks I'll bring negative vibes, since I'm still bitter about everything. I have no feelings for him, but I feel betrayed by my sister and my parents. He is just past a hole in my eyes now. My sister is now 6 months pregnant. Due to her age, she has been extremely pampered by my parents. She still lives at home and is going to move in with him maybe 2 months after the baby is born. Then they're going to marry. In my culture, it's normal that if a woman gives birth, she moves back or stays with her mom so the mom can help with the baby for the first months. A week ago, my sister's friends threw a surprise baby shower. I happened to be at home. I tried to talk to them. I don't know why. Maybe because my sister and I were so close before, and I'm sad we're no longer friends, but her friends acted like I wasn't there and only replied to me with yes, no, or silence, as if I was the one who created this mess, or I was a homewrecker, or I tried to seduce my sister's man. I was already planning to move, I was saving money, etc. But after that, I left immediately to a friend's house. I'm in the process of finding my own place. 2 days ago, I received a call from my parents asking me to have a talk. I went to their house, and they informed me that the diamond earrings my grandma left me will be given to my sister. Those earrings have been in my family for 4 generations, and before my grandma died, she said the earrings would be mine, and my sister would receive the gold necklace. Grandma trusted my parents with the earrings. There was no will or anything. She just asked to give them to me when I was mature enough to appreciate and take care of a family heirloom. Now, my parents think since my sister is getting married first and is having grandma's first great-grandchild, my sister should have them. I'm really mad now. They're robbing me of something my grandma left to me. I don't think my parents are evil. I think they're afraid my sister wouldn't marry due to her age. Again, in my culture, a single woman in her 40s is something to worry about for her family, and now that she's forming a family, they want to reward her with everything. But I was the closest to my grandma. She made it clear the earrings would be mine. Not my sister S, not the first one to marry or have a child, but mine. After 2 years of being excluded in favor of my sister, I gave my parents an ultimatum. They give the earrings to me as my grandma intended, or I will cut them from my life forever. Not gonna lie, the idea of cutting my family off is too painful, but I feel they already made me and still make me feel so wronged. I don't want them in my life anymore. I feel a little shallow fighting over this, but those are the only things my granddad left. If they are not entitled to them. Now for some comments. Comment, you need to get a lawyer. Those earrings are your inheritance from your grandmother, and if it's documented in your grandmother's will, they can be sued and charged with stealing. I know you don't want to do this, but your family has already shown you that you don't matter to them at all. Do you honestly believe that they are going to care if you go no contact with them? Don't warn them that you're going to press charges for stealing the will, giving you the earrings will magically go missing. I'm sorry, OP. You deserve better, and I hope you stay strong enough to make boundaries that you will be able to stand by. OP. Grandma left no will. She handed her jewelry, and most of them were family heirlooms, to everybody. My grandma was the 4th generation. I was 12 when my grandma died. She gave the earrings to my mom so I could have them when I was ready to take care of them properly. I always thought I would wear them on my wedding day or a very special day. Since I lived with my parents not so long ago, I never asked for them because Mom has them in a safe in her room with other important stuff. I don't know if they would care. I think they don't believe they're doing anything wrong handing the earrings to the sister that is having Grandma's first great-grandchild. But if Grandma wanted that, she would have stated, "The sister that has the first child must receive the earrings." She said they were mine. Honestly, the entitlement. Comment. Can you access the safe without your parents? Opie. Yes, I still have keys from the house. I'm worried that if I take them, there would be legal consequences. I have a text from my mom admitting the earrings were meant for me. I could use our extended family that knows my grandma's last wishes, but I don't think it will be enough. Comment. Keep the text, take the earrings, then go no contact with no explanation. They are well aware of why you're going no contact. Your family is not good people, and you are not required to keep them in your life. Update. This is old, but I keep receiving messages every once in a while asking for an update. Yes, I got the earrings. After my post, I went to my parents' house, opened the safe, took the earrings and left. Then, after that, I went again, told my parents I needed time to process stuff and be my own self, and gave their house keys back. I said I was leaving for good. There were some tears from my mom, saying she couldn't believe I was such a bitter person. She raised me better. I was turning my back to my family over nothing. And finally, that it was shameful that I would leave the family house without being married or anything. So it was never about me or her loving me, it was about social pressure to keep an outdated tradition. My dad was very neutral, gave me a hug and wished me luck. For 2 months, nothing happened, and I barely had contact with my family. I found a place to live, tried to heal, had real fun decorating my new home, your normal stuff. And then everything happened at once. For those 2 months, my sister and mom never reached out to me. Only my dad sent a text once a week asking how I was and wishing I was doing well. Then, my sister's boyfriend/future husband, also my ex, started to follow me on Instagram again. I found it weird, but anyway, after all, he's my sister's boyfriend, soon-to-be father of my niece, future brother-in-law, etc. Then, he started liking my stories and replying to them with heart emojis and looking good. This happened 3 times, maybe. When I received the voicemail from my mom calling me all sorts of names for going after a man that I knew was engaged. This was some kind of revenge over my poor sister. That I was causing her so much stress her blood pressure was over the moon. I was an inconsiderate femme fatale, and she raised me better. Later, I learned through a cousin that my sister took her fiancé's cell phone and found several conversations with several women, including his attempt to talk to me. So, of course, she went to my mom crying about me trying to steal her fiancé. All messy, TBH. Less than a week later, Another voicemail from Mom asking me where the earrings were. She went looking for them, and when she couldn't find them, deduced it was me. She called me a thief, a disgrace, dishonorable, and said they didn't consider me family anymore. I was dead to them, and she would be taking legal action against me for theft if it was possible. I had no option but to block her and my sister and other family members that sided with them. My dad later texted me to let me know my mom went nuts, and they wouldn't take any legal action. By the end of last month, my cousin texted me saying my sister had given birth to my niece. I know I shouldn't, but I did it. I went to the hospital with a gift while wearing my beautiful and fancy earrings. I was kicked out, of course, but it was worth it. I have no plans to see them ever again. Well, maybe my dad. Also, my cousin, big gossiper, that girl. Let me know my sister is getting married in May, so she'll have her happily ever after all. But I'm also living my best life RN. Now for some comments. Comment. Little rookie mistake when Mom called to tell her about the earrings. OP should have been prepared to yell in her most indignant voice. What the hell do you mean you lost my earrings? And then imply that sister or ex stole them and block everyone. They have no proof of her having them. Comment. The whole situation with the ex and OP's sister was an entire show on a lot of levels. But bottom line, those earrings are OPS, as Grandma intended. OP really needs to stay no contact for her own sake. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Love of my life wants to explore a relationship with another guy. Need advice on what to do next. Kills me that I am here and that I had to hit join on this group. Kills me that I had to learn what all the acronyms were. It kills me that I am writing this, but I am hurting and have no support system and not sure what to do next. For those who care, here is my story. I am a 31-year-old man. My wife is a 30-year-old woman. We began dating back in high school over 15 years ago. We became so close. We did everything together, and we were basically each other's first everything. We went to school together, learned how to drive together, and experienced college and the workforce for the first time together. Even though she was 2 grades behind me in school, that somehow was never an issue, and we went to different yet local colleges, and that was still never an issue. I got a job at Walmart when I was 19, and she also ended up getting a job there a year or so later, so we even worked at the same place for a while together. We did everything together: vacations, schoolwork, day trips, movies, dates, shopping, anything you could think of. Her parents really liked me and I them, so they would actually let me stay in their house on weekends in their daughter's room/bed while I went to college. Never any real issues. After my 3rd year of college, I just moved my stuff into their house. I have lived with my wife full-time since 2011, the year I turned 21 and her 19. Now, we have definitely had our share of bumps along the way. My wife is the youngest of 3 kids, and there is a 9-year gap between her and her next oldest brother. Her 2 older brothers are not very successful in their lives, and a lot of the time they weren't communicating with my wife or her parents for long stretches. Because of this, my wife almost grew up as the only child, and she was extremely smart and was always top of her grade in high school and college. Because of this, her parents always spoiled her with things and gave her all the focus, which made her become a selfish person. She also had a lot of jealousy issues when we were in our teens and early 20s, and I always was dismissive towards these feelings and refused to stop talking to female friends of mine because I felt it wasn't right to let them go. Ultimately, we were able to move through those types of issues, and we communicated and we grew closer together. We were engaged in June 2011 at a Taylor Swift concert, no less, and married exactly 2 years later in 2013. We just celebrated our 15 years of dating back on March 1st of this year. Our son was born in 2016 and just began school last fall. Our son was born in 2016, which completely changed our lives and added a lot of stress to our relationship. We had suffered through a miscarriage right before, which took a heavy toll, but we immediately got pregnant a few months later, which led to the birth of our son. We both had hope for a girl, but life is unpredictable. Also, we had still been living with my wife's parents since 2011 but had built an addition onto their home in 2012 for her mother, who had beaten cancer but had a lot of lasting side effects that made it difficult for her to climb stairs, etc. So, they built essentially a mother-in-law apartment on the bottom floor that connected to the kitchen, and we were given full reign of the original home. So, for the most part, life was pretty good, although very busy and stressful. During these times, we had fights due to stress, lack of sleep, time spent at work, and things we didn't agree on all the time. To me, it was tough, but we were always good at communicating and always got through the issues and never went to bed mad or had any major big fights, maybe one or two tops, where one of us would leave the room to cool off. I always thought that even though it was tough at times, we had pushed through and faced so many things and still came out loving each other, and that we were the gold standard of relationships. Her parents were married over 30 years, as are mine. In 2018, my wife's mother passed away due to lasting complications of her long-past cancer treatments, and that destroyed my wife. They were very close, and we were still living in the two families with them, and she slowly became weaker and was placed in at-home hospice until she finally went. She and her father were completely devastated, as was I, because she was a second mother to me, and I loved her, and our son came to love her in his nearly 2 years of life. I realized I couldn't properly provide the comfort and support my wife needed in her time of need for reasons I still don't understand. I was raised to avoid pain and conflict and to not show emotions. When my wife needed me, I could only say I'm sorry and rub her leg or arm instead of giving her the full comfort she needed. I feel this became the next major crack in our relationship. It took my wife a very long time to grieve and process her mother's death, and to this day, I feel that my wife still never fully healed properly and in the best way. In the summer of 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, we had been house hunting for our first home, as I had gotten a very good job and finally wanted to spread our wings as a family and get our own house and yard in an area with a nice school district. Her parents' home is not in a great neighborhood, and our son would be going to the same school we had went to, but it was not great then and fell to much lower depths since. While my wife agreed our son needed a better school to attend, she did not want to really move, spend the money, leave her dad who was still grieving, etc., which caused a big rift for us. Again, these issues combined with years since our son was born of slowly drifting apart emotionally and just patching things caused my wife to suggest, in the summer of 2020, that we potentially consider separation for a bit. At the time, I thought she was crazy for thinking we couldn't get through these struggles, as we had always done, and we just needed to talk things out and work on ourselves. We were both still in our 20s and had our son to think about. I ultimately convinced her to reconsider separation, and things improved for a while, but I feel we eventually fell into similar patterns. I see now that I wasn't as affectionate towards my wife as I should have been, and while my love language is acts of service, I don't feel I was fully fulfilling what my wife needed and what her love language needs were. We ultimately paused on the house hunting, but then in early 2021, I was offered a much better job with a well over 6-figure salary. But the location was about 45 minutes north of our current location. I really considered not taking it because I like my current company and my job was very simple, and I knew this job would be much more demanding. Ultimately, my wife said I should take the job, and we now had a much larger budget for a house, and the tax rates were at historic lows, so everything seems to align perfectly. We purchased a house about 40 minutes north and moved in late March 2021. Things were great at first in the new home. We bought a puppy that April, which my wife always wanted for years, but I always said no, not until we get our own home with a yard. In June, we traveled to CT so I could buy her a new car, and over the summer, we figured out she could leave her state job because of the poor commute, and I took on the extra financial burden while she settled into her rideshare business, Uber. However, right after the August 2020 incident where my wife mentioned separation, I began to develop health issues, which we now recently believe may have been mostly caused by stress and anxiety and moderate depression. The buying the house and moving helped, but I still felt lousy a good deal of the time physically and mentally. Our physical and intimate relationships suffered even further from this, but we were working through things together. Now, to the tough part. My wife has complained a lot about the place we live in now because it is in a cellular and internet dead zone. It is far from things she is used to, far from her dad, who she is extremely close with, and it is tough for her because she likes to Uber down in the cities where we used to live versus up north where it is much quieter. Throughout some of March and April, she began doing Uber quests which force you to do a large number of rides in a few days' time. To hit these goals, my wife would sometimes sleep at her dad's house because it was too late to drive home at 2 a.m. This is completely reasonable and something she has done many times in the past with me there as well, so no reason to suspect anything. However, this became a more frequent occurrence and she started working more and more when, really, we didn't necessarily need the extra money. As a side note, my wife and I opened our own bank accounts at the same bank back when I first started working as a teen, and we opened up a joint account that was only used to save for our wedding but then became our primary household account once we were married. My wife has been employed on and off throughout our relationship, but every time she is earning income, it would always go directly to her old personal account that was linked to the main account, while my paychecks always went to the joint account, and that is the one where all of the expenses and bills would be paid from. I never, in 15 years, had visibility into her personal account, and my account was only ever used around Christmas so I could mask online store purchases for surprise gifts. I haven't had money in that account in at least 3 or 4 years, if not longer. Then, on April 30th, my wife told me she was going to go out and work rides and then hang out with her cousin, who we are both very close with, for her 30th birthday. My wife leaves the house around 11 a.m. on April 30th, and I do not hear a peep from her until she returns around 11 p.m. on May 1st. She comes home and seems kind of distant. I kind of ask how things went. Was she with her cousin that whole time? She is just being strange and standoffish, and then finally says she was doing some figuring things out and didn't want to discuss it at 11 o'clock at night. Clearly, I am now understanding she is unhappy again, and it's boiling over, and she is going to ask to separate again. I push some more, and that is essentially what transpires. She says she still loves me but is not in love with me, and she wants to separate and she wants to move and live with her dad. However, she can't exactly move out yet because the aforementioned cousin and her family moved into the house that we left when we bought our own. But we, or I, learned recently that the cousin's husband had accepted a job many states away, and the whole family was going to be moving out there, but not until mid-July. So, until then, my wife has nowhere to really live if she left. At this point, it is after midnight and we are both exhausted. I am just in shock, even though I kind of saw this coming, so I just tell her she can stay, and we will talk about it more later. At this point, my wife is not sad, regretful, or remorseful. She is just kind of cold and unhappy, and at that moment, her lack of empathy towards me is really crushing. We finally go to sleep in the same bed together as usual, while I actually quietly cry myself to sleep. The next few days are tough, but we communicate openly, and I get it in my head that this isn't the end-all be-all, and there is still hope for us somewhere. I love her with all of my heart and soul and our family, and I figured, hey, I've got 2 months to work on this. Skip forward to that Friday, May 6th, or rather, D-Day. I usually work from home on Fridays, and my wife and I had been communicating well since the previous weekend, and we were both home on this day. Well, I tell her I have a long work call that I have to be on at 1 p.m., and I was going to be at least 60 to 90 minutes. Earlier in the morning, her dad calls her on the phone while she is sitting next to me. The exchange is weird, and my wife specifically mentions that I am next to her, and her dad basically then rushes off the phone. This was strange to me that he would call her during the day, especially if he was at work with no real purpose. Well, whatever, I thought it was fishy, but I had work to do and a conference call to get on at 1 p.m. It happens that the call only lasts about 30 minutes, and my work desk is downstairs in the living room, and our bedroom is right upstairs. Our house is very open, and sound travels well. I get off my call early, and everything has been muted for my call, so the house is silent. I get back to working on my computer, but then I hear my wife on the phone with her dad again. I really didn't care and was not attempting to eavesdrop, but again, it was dead silent, and sound travels here, and our house isn't huge. I can essentially hear clearly everything my wife was saying. At first, I was just tuning her out and just working, so I missed a lot of the conversation, but then I hear things that make me perk right up, things like, "No, he doesn't know that yet," and "Yeah, he could help fix it," referring to our aging water heater, but I doubt my name would let him, and "He was so mad at me, he didn't talk to me for weeks when he found out," referring to someone I didn't know or but then realized it was the husband of the aforementioned cousin again, who we are all close friends with. So, at this point, I have a huge pit in my stomach. I'm a pretty smart guy, and it was pretty easy to see that there was something I didn't know about some person who is apparently a plumber that I don't know about, and someone else who is very upset about finding out a secret. I am too sick to go up the stairs in that moment. My wife comes down after and kind of gives her an opening to talk, and she doesn't really say anything. About an hour later, she goes up, and I follow her and basically ask if there is something I should know. She kind of plays dumb at first, Then I come out and ask what secret is being kept from me that her dad and others know. She says, very patronizingly, I mean, do you really want to know? For which I hesitate and then respond affirmatively. It is then, around 3 p.m. on May 6, 2022, that my universe was completely shattered. My wife tells me, yes, there is another person she has feelings for and has been seeing for some time, how long I still do not yet know. And her plan is to separate for me to explore a relationship with this other guy. I immediately began crying for the first time probably since our wedding day, and by far the longest and hardest I have ever cried in my entire life. I was sitting at the foot of the bed just bawling and choking and dry heaving and hyperventilating because my absolute worst nightmare had just come true. My wife is just sitting silent up on the bed where we sleep, not sad, not crying, not in pain, just quiet. I ask her some questions like how long and who is he, and she doesn't want to tell me to protect my feelings, so the trickle truths begin. I learned that she recently told her dad, which is why he was calling her to check on things, but she never intended on telling me. She told me she was purposely lying and hiding it to spare my feelings, and then was just going to find this guy a few months after we separated, so it would be no harm, no foul. Too bad she got caught, but she still had no real remorse or regret. At one point, she started to cry a little bit, but only after seeing how absolutely destroyed and inconsolable I was for about an hour. She just kept saying, sorry, and I don't want to hurt you, and I'd hug you, but you probably don't want that. So she kept her distance as I was buried in my hands and my tears, and my pleas to God and the universe as to why this was happening and how could she do this. Pretty pathetic stuff to witness, I'm sure, especially since I've always been an emotional fortress, which has probably contributed to our issues. She offers to move out at this point if I want to help me cope with this wreckage. The problem is, throughout the years, I had slowly distanced myself from any friends, most family, and any support group outside of my wife, as she has always been my rock and confidant. My wife had just torn out my heart and soul, and she was still the only person I felt comfortable talking to about it. I tell her I don't want her to leave because I love her so much, so we agree that she will stay until mid-July and we will slowly detach from each other. And then she will move out and she will explore with this new guy. It is at this point many people will say I made a huge mistake by letting her stay and not just ripping the Band-Aid off, but in that moment I was so emotionally broken, and she is truly the love of my life, and I was always raised to fight for what I love and what I believe in, and I love her with everything, and I know she loves me too, just not romantically, and I cannot just let her go without fighting because I would hold that regret of not trying everything I could when I had the chance. I understand this decision will probably be more emotionally damaging to me over time, but her being here is helping me cope and grieve in a way that I couldn't do alone. Now is the strange, complicated part. The sudden and intense shock and trauma of learning of the affair snapped my brain into realizing the things I had been doing wrong and allowed me to understand that I needed to be more supportive, affectionate, and emotionally available. It was in the next few days that I was determined to do a 180, so to speak, and change my whole thinking and attitude towards my wife and our marriage. I began kissing her a lot, texting her saying I love you a lot, holding her, cuddling her. We were being intimate and it was great. For 2 weeks this went on, and we had another deep and long discussion where she said she was now torn on what to do because I had, by just expressing feelings that were already there, effectively somewhat relit the flame in our romantic life, and she was torn on what to do moving forward. This, of course, to me at the time was the best thing I could possibly hear. My wife is reconsidering leaving. What I am doing is working. We will be able to build back stronger from this. However, my wife had a few previous plans already set up with OP that I was unaware of. A night away with him to watch him race mopeds, WTF, which was last Saturday and Sunday, and a week vacation in mid-June to Myrtle Beach, which has been our annual vacation spot together since before our son was born. When I learned of these and that she still planned on going, I hurt all over again. I learned that I am now actively competing and probably losing to this OP. Last Saturday 5/21. We had a cookout in our yard to celebrate the nice weather. It was in the 90s here, and the cousin and her kids came up, and we had a really great family day, and my wife and I were very happy and affectionate all day. But then that night, she packed her overnight bag, some SX toys, and hugged me and kissed me goodbye to go spend a night with OP. POF, did that hurt. I was damn near suicidal. I was regretting asking to know the whole truth while letting her still live with me, pretending things were fine. When she came back that Sunday night, we were a bit distant. I was still hurting a lot and we didn't talk much. The next morning, as I'm getting ready for work and getting my son ready for school, I start to break down and say to my wife that we need to have a long discussion. She agrees and she cuddles me and says that this is hurting her and she feels that she is so torn and she hated leaving me that Saturday, and she wants to use her next trip in June to really figure out and decide what she wants to do. This hurts me, but I get a small glimmer of hope that she might actually choose me and our relationship in all of this. So I am filled with some hope, and I feel a lot better than I had in over 4 days. Sick to stomach, not eating, shaky, etc. However, that night, May 23rd, we have our longest conversation yet, where we both lay out as much as we can for over 3 hours. We both cry hard in each other's arms, but at the end, I ask point blank if there is any hope of me winning her back in these next 2 months. And she says that she feels she ultimately still has to move out and explore with the OP, no matter what happens between now and July. She says that she is too afraid of feeling the pain that I am currently feeling if she had to let OP go, and that our relationship would suffer because she is afraid that she would feel regret and resentment towards me for making her break things off with OP. At this point, I am devastated, I think, more than the first time, because the hope that I was clinging to, the thing that was getting me through all of this pain and devastation, was basically taken away. This was 5 days ago, and things have been somewhat strange between my wife and I since. We have had sex once, but our relationship has seemed not as good as it was in the good 2 weeks following D-Day. My hopes of even surviving these next 2 months of near normality seem dashed as well. We are having a big Memorial Day party at our house with my parents, my sister, her dad, cousin, and kids, etc. tomorrow, so I'm just trying to focus on that. After that, I don't know what the future looks like. I am just in so much incredible pain every day, and my wife is always open to communicating with me, asking me how I'm doing, kissing me, hugging me, telling me she loves me, but I know ultimately, in her mind, she wants to be with OP and wouldn't even be here if she had a place to go. I want to bring up reconciliation or MC with her, but I don't know how. It seems or is probably out of the question in her current state of mind. My hope and my plan was to just show her as much love and affection as possible so she would change her mind and get out of the affair fog, so she can see clearly the devastation she is causing me, soon to be our son, and her as well, because she clearly won't be able to have a fully healthy relationship with me or OP or anyone until she can work on herself. She admitted to me through tears that she knows she is a selfish person, and her selfishness is what is causing her to hurt her family and make the decision to leave to try to improve her happiness and to avoid the pain I am feeling now. She would rather me burden this pain than do it herself, and that in itself is the root of this whole situation and the main barrier to. This has been a very long story. For those who have made it this far, I thank you. I am unsure of what to do next, how to feel towards my wife. Should I talk to her about MC? Should I talk to her dad, who is very much a father to me as well? I have no support system really. I have my family, but we don't discuss these types of things, and they would just disown my wife, I'm sure, for the pain she has caused. Things are not that simple. She is not a terrible person. She has just done a terrible thing but now is caught up in the affair fog, thinking this new OP can give her more than I can. If anyone has a relatable story, advice, or experience to share, it would be much appreciated. I am barely hanging on right now. The thought of my son and maybe some false hope for the future are all that are keeping me here. Relevant comments were, "You are ignoring her actions. Quit listening to her lies. She isn't figuring things out, she has already abandoned your marriage. She is miles ahead of you, and you are getting further behind. Quit playing the pick-me dance. She isn't giving you consideration. Quit making things convenient for her at your expense. Get her out of the house. Give her the experience of being single now. Withdraw all financial and emotional support." OP replies, "Thank you for the reply. Yes, I am aware I'm doing the pick-me dance, and it isn't healthy. I am hoping for some magical thing to happen that fixes this whole mess, but that is a fantasy. We still love each other, so deep down I thought we could somehow reconcile. With her gone now, I don't know what I'll do or how it will affect our son." Now on to the next story. Story 9. GF won't stop acting like Gollum after watching Lord of the Rings and calls my private part precious. I hated it at first, but now we're both doing it and can't stop. Her parents caught a Smeagol. Hi guys. This all started when my girlfriend, 21, And I, 24, started watching the LOTR movies since we both had never seen them before. We have seen the first and second now. She started crawling around the house like Smeagol and Gollum since we watched the second movie. Started as a joke, but she doesn't stop. She keeps grabbing at my clothes like Gollum does in the movies, sometimes even grabbing my crotch and calling it my precious. It makes me feel super uncomfortable, and I don't know what to do. She has also grabbed raw meat and fish out of my hands while I was cooking. I don't think it's funny anymore. I have told her before it makes me uncomfortable, and she told me she'd stop, but she doesn't stop. I really don't know what to do. I don't want our relationship to end like this. Now for some comments. Comment. Asked my BF if he would leave me if I acted like Smeagol, and he said, I already do. Comment. Maybe she is just subtly asking for you to put a ring on her finger. Comment. He might not want to take her to a volcano after giving her a ring. Update. A quick summary for those who haven't read my previous post. After watching the first 2 Lord of the Rings movies, my girlfriend, 21, wouldn't stop acting like Smeagol. I complained how she crossed my boundaries a couple of times and that I was afraid our relationship would end because of this. I've read all your comments and came to the conclusion that it was just lighthearted fun. After making the post, I started seeing the humor in it. We have watched the 3rd movie, and we both really enjoyed it. So what did I do? She continued acting like Smeagol for the last weeks. And yes, there were still moments where it made me uncomfortable, like the constant referring to my member as my precious, but I was able to brush it off, as the comments suggested. I tried out Smeagoling her back. So when she would behave like this, I would do it back. I assumed this would make it stop, but no, it made it worse. We've had moments where we couldn't stop laughing because we kept interacting like Smeagol to each other. This is fine and funny and private, but because we started doing it all the time, it became something that would happen in public too. Like when you do something ironically, you can't stop doing it after a while. We were having dinner with her parents, and we were talking to each other in Smeagol voice. Her parents were both in the kitchen. Her mother came over to ask me something, and I accidentally replied in the Smeagol voice, and it was super awkward. My girlfriend now makes fun of me for that, which is fair, I guess. After all, this story has a happy ending, and I think I like my girlfriend even more now. Now for some comments. Comment. Waiting for the next update to be, help, I got carried away as Smeagol and bit my GF's finger off, and she broke up with me. How do I get her back? Anyway, happy for you, OP. Comment. She calls his penis my precious. She is never breaking up with him ever. Anyway, happy for you, OP. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Wife cheated on me and left me for an unemployed AP. Now she's begging for mercy. My wife and I met on a blind date that was set up by friends. I was a little hesitant to go through with this blind date because I never had much luck with them, but I had been in a bit of a dry spell. It was either go on this date or continue to remain lonely. I got on the date and it ended up being amazing. My wife, or girlfriend at the time, was very friendly and charming. We had a decent amount in common, so making conversation wasn't a struggle. The 2 of us dated for nearly 2 years. From there, we moved in together and got married in a small wedding ceremony surrounded by family and friends. We had lived together before marriage, which I always insisted on doing. In my mind, it gave people a chance to get to know each other better and see if they were a match before taking that giant step into marriage. Marrying my wife seemed like the best decision at the time. The 2 of us moved into a better apartment, continued to succeed in our jobs, and even got a pet dog. She was the one who wanted the dog, yet I ended up being the one who took care of it most of the time. Don't get me wrong, I loved the dog and enjoyed taking care of her. I'd always loved animals, but my wife was the one who wanted this specific breed that could be a bit difficult to handle. She promised me up and down that she would care for the dog a little more than half the time. However, I was doing over 90% of the work when it came to our pet. This should have been my first red flag that she was so willing to brush off a responsibility. I just did my best to handle it because I was still madly in love with my wife. When she got a promotion at work, things started to change, but not for the better. I understood she had a lot of responsibilities now because she was supervising 3 people. It just seemed like there was something more to it. Anytime I asked her what was going on, She just said she was super stressed at work and that she was sorry for treating me this way. It was just a whole lot of stress. I wanted to believe it, so I forced myself to believe it. Ignorance is bliss, as they say, and I remained in ignorance for nearly a year after my wife's change in behavior. One day, I decided to surprise her at work. I had gotten off early, so I thought it would be a nice romantic little thing for us to do. I got to the office and was told that my wife had stepped out to go to lunch. It was my fault for not checking with her, so I went back to my car. When I was about to pull out of the parking spot, I saw my wife entering the office building with a younger man who I think was one of her subordinates. The reason I did a double take is how she was acting with him. She was very touchy, giggly, and not acting like a supervisor would with someone they were supervising. I watched them go inside the building, but as much as I tried to brush it off, I couldn't because I kept picturing how happy she looked. My wife never looked at me like that anymore. Pained me to say this, but it was the truth. I wanted to ask her what was going on, except I doubted she would tell me the truth. So I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. The phone is always the place where you'll find what you need. Her texts were full of evidence of an affair with her subordinate. I sent copies of all the texts to myself. In a surge of impulsivity, I wanted a chance to be able to use them. Once she got out of the shower, I told her I knew of the affair and to not lie to me about everything because I knew the truth. She seemed shocked that I would take the step of going into her phone and violating her trust, which was ridiculous. She was the one to cheat on me in the first place. She looked like she wanted to hit me but just stormed off back into the bathroom. I was glad that we only had another month left on this lease because our marriage was over. For a few days after that, I was in shock about the end of my marriage. Once the shock wore off, the grief set in. My wife had left to go stay with her parents. They were supporting her, but this was no surprise to them. She was their little girl who could do no wrong. I had finally sought out a lawyer and planned to move into another unit in the complex that was smaller than the one I shared with my wife. She seemed to be facing no consequences. Her family and friends were on her side, with her job still going well. It was then I had enough and decided to make the affair known to my wife's workplace. I had evidence to back it up, so it wasn't like I couldn't prove it. The fallout was quick. My wife was forced to resign, and the subordinate was moved to another department. When I learned she left her job, she reached out to me and lashed out, saying how she knew this was my fault. I didn't deny it and told her I took screenshots of her text messages that day and was sitting on them for weeks now. She screamed and cried, saying she was going to have her father hire a lawyer to go after me, but it was all bluster. My soon-to-be ex was the one who had done wrong by having a relationship with someone below her. It went against the rules set forth by her place of work. It was a relief when the divorce was final, and we were no longer legally married. I spent a lot of this situation in a state of shock and then devastation most of the time. I was wavering between the two. The divorce being final was a chance for me to be able to heal, which I desperately needed. For a while, my ex-wife did try to harass me, but eventually, it stopped. I don't know why she did that, and frankly, I didn't care. It meant that my ex was now finally out of my hair. It was the best part of it. The last I heard about my ex is that she had gotten another job, but it's much lower paying than her other one. It had been hard for her to find one because of how suddenly she left her other job. This was completely of her own doing, so she had no one to blame but herself. I still don't know where it all went wrong or why she cheated in the first place. The best I can figure is she's just a terrible person who enjoyed the rush of cheating on me with someone at work. His being younger probably was a boost to her ego, too. My ex certainly would have gone far in that job, too. I've since received another promotion with another on the horizon. I also got the dog in the divorce because I was the one to take care of her anyway. There was no way she was going to take her. Honestly, I can say I don't care what happens to my ex or where she ends up in 5 years. I'm on the path to happiness, and she seems to be on a path to permanent misery. Do I hope that she looks back and regrets what she did? Sort of. But I hope one day I won't care about that either. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Wife betrayed me, and her mom slept with stepdad on spa getaway. So I got revenge by blowing up their affair at family dinner and served divorce papers on the spot. My wife and I met when we were teenagers in high school. We lived a few houses down from each other, and when I moved to the neighborhood, she was very welcoming. She introduced me to all of the friends that I made, and we were a part of the same friend group. We grew very close over the years we knew each other, and eventually I confessed to her that I had feelings. To my surprise, she had them too. We started dating, and it really seemed like I had found the love of my life. While we were still in high school, she really leaned on me for support during a tough time. Her father had cheated on her mother with an employee at the store he owned. They went through a very nasty, bitter divorce, and my girlfriend was very upset with all of it. She got pregnant the summer after we both graduated high school. To put a bit of a damper on our big plans for the future, her going to college wasn't feasible since we couldn't afford daycare options for a baby while she was in school, nor could we afford to send both of us to a university. I ended up going to a technical school and getting certified in HVAC installation and repair. It wasn't what I wanted to do by any means, but after I finished, I landed a good job that paid well enough for me to take care of my family. We got married shortly after, and everything started to feel like it was falling into place. My wife was an incredible mom. We were all happy and healthy, and we were actually looking into buying a house. My wife was very close with her mother. I hate to say it, but I almost thought they were too close. I could tell that my mother-in-law's demeanor toward my wife changed after the divorce. She started treating my wife more like a friend than a daughter. I knew she just needed somebody to talk to and sort through her own problems, but a big part of me felt like that was inappropriate. After their divorce, I didn't remember my mother-in-law ever dating anybody else. When we would go out to dinner with her, she would comment on how cute a server was or mention there was a handsome guy checking her out, but nothing ever came of those comments. My wife was the one to encourage her to get on the dating apps. She helped her make her profile, and she even helped her prepare for a couple of dates that she went on. After a few weeks of casual dating, my mother-in-law called my wife one night proclaiming that she was in love. She talked all about this incredible man that she met and how she instantly saw a future with him. My wife was excited for her, partially because she knew that if she had another man in her life, she might avoid oversharing with her. My mother-in-law continued dating that man for a few months before she introduced him to us. To all of our surprise, when she introduced him to us, she introduced him as her husband. They had apparently eloped. It was a big shock to my wife and me. Personally, I thought my mother-in-law had lost her mind after everything she had gone through with her divorce. It was very unexpected for her to behave in such a way. However, I couldn't deny that it seemed like they really cared for each other. The man was good-looking, had a good job, and was very charismatic. He seemed like an all-around good guy. I actually found that I liked talking to him about certain things as well. Over the next several weeks, he was being slowly integrated into our family. We let him meet our daughter, and he was introduced to other relatives at family gatherings. Nobody would have suspected that anything was amiss. A few months had passed since he was introduced into our lives, and my wife started to change. She was growing very distant from me emotionally and physically. We were hardly talking to each other about anything other than our daughter. It seemed like she was avoiding every other topic I brought up, even ones as trivial as TV shows that I was excited about. After the birth of our daughter, our sex life definitely slowed down, but it had never been halted altogether. Every time I would try to initiate anything, my wife would tell me she had cramps or a headache and wasn't in the mood. I was starting to feel like there was something wrong with me. One night, she came to me and told me that she needed a night off. I was kind of confused about what she meant because she didn't have a job. When I brought that up, we got into a huge argument about how raising our daughter was a full-time job and how she thought it was disrespectful of me to ignore the work she was doing. I had no idea she felt that way, so I apologized and told her that she could book a room at a local spa for a night and relax while I took care of everything at home. She was happy with that response, and we ended the argument there. Her night at the spa came and went, and when she got home, it felt like she was back to her old self. She was happy and smiling, and she told me all about the massages she got and how much she needed the rest. That same night, I tried to initiate sex, and she rejected me again. I didn't pressure her into explaining or anything like that, but once again, I felt very slighted by her. Still, I never suspected her of cheating. I just thought that there was something wrong with me. I started to take that sentiment to heart, and I was feeling really depressed about it. I had never been the type of person to open up about my feelings, so I didn't know how to ask her about it. One night, my wife was exhausted, so I told her to go hop in a bubble bath, and I would put our daughter to bed. I went about my end of the bargain. I read my daughter a story before tucking her in, and when she was asleep, I made my way out to just go channel surfing until I was ready for bed. As I was walking by the bathroom, I heard my wife moaning inside. Honestly, what she did in the bathroom was her own business, so I wasn't immediately suspicious that something else was going on. I just figured she was enjoying herself. The following day, my wife and I were in the backyard playing with our daughter. We were all sitting on the porch, and my wife had to jump up to throw some clothes in the dryer. She left her phone behind, but I didn't think about going through it at the time. I actually found the evidence on it by accident when I grabbed it to take a picture of our daughter while she was doing something cute. It was something I had done dozens of times in the past. It was just the closest phone to me. I noticed from the thumbnail in the corner of the camera that the most recent picture taken was of my wife while she was in the bath. I was curious, so I clicked on it really quickly and saw that it was a video. I immediately closed it and pretended like I didn't see anything while I was outside with my daughter, but I couldn't stop thinking about why my wife would have had that video on her phone. It certainly wasn't something that she sent to me, so it didn't make sense why she would have it. Later that night, while everybody was asleep, I got up to go to the bathroom and decided I wanted to investigate the matter more. I grabbed her phone and looked through it for more information about why she took that video. I was curious if she had sent it to anyone. As I looked, I felt my entire world being ripped out from under my feet. She had sent the video to someone. She sent it to her new stepfather. I read through their text message exchanges, and I noticed that there had been several times he requested pictures and videos from her. Their entire affair began when her stepfather texted her for very inappropriate advice on what kind of lingerie he should surprise her mother with. My wife first replied saying that she had no idea. Then he asked her what she would wear. From there, the messages all turned sexual, and she sent him several pictures of her wearing lingerie that I bought for her. They exchanged countless pictures of each other naked, and from what I could tell, they had met up for sex at least once the night my wife spent at the spa. She invited him over, and they spent the entire night together. I felt sick to my stomach learning about that. It was the ultimate breach of my trust, and I didn't know how I was going to move forward. My wife was the love of my life, and she took my heart and crushed it. We had a family together, and she was throwing it all away. What turned my self-pity into absolute anger was when I remembered her coming home from the spa and telling me about everything that happened. The massages and everything were things that her stepfather had given her, and she told me about them by covering up the true nature of it all. I took countless screenshots and sent myself an email with everything. I would be using all of that in our impending divorce. Before I gave her the papers, I knew right away that I wanted to get back at her in some way. They both needed to face the consequences of what they did. Some time had passed, and I was still trying to figure out how I wanted to go about ending my marriage. My mother-in-law actually contacted us and told me that she was going to be throwing a party for the entire family to officially celebrate her marriage. It was going to be kind of like an unofficial wedding reception. I figured it would be the perfect time to expose both of them. The day of the party came, and once everybody was gathered around the table for dinner, I stood up to give a toast. I started by telling the man that he had been welcomed into all of our lives with open arms, and everybody thought he would be great for my mother-in-law. Then I told him that we were all wrong. Everybody was confused, but I explained that I knew he had been sending inappropriate things to my wife, and that they had slept together. They both tried to lie right in front of everyone and say that it wasn't true, but I had receipts. There was no denying what I saw. At the end of it, I handed my wife the divorce papers that I had filed days before and told her that I wanted her out of our house. My mother-in-law was absolutely heartbroken, more so from the betrayal of her daughter sleeping with a man she loved than anything. My wife chased after me when I walked away, trying to convince me to have a conversation with her. I told her that she wasn't worth my time anymore and that she should try to talk to her mother, who she stabbed in the back. A few days after all of that, my former mother-in-law reached out to me and told me that she was very sorry about everything that happened. She felt guilty for bringing the man into everyone's lives. I told her that it wasn't her fault if they were both willing to cheat so easily. It was bound to happen in the future. She told me that she was trying to find a way to forgive her daughter but didn't think that she could. My wife and I ended up getting divorced, and I have the house and custody of our daughter. I still stay in touch with my former mother-in-law because I know how difficult it has all been for her, and the last thing I wanted was for her to feel like she lost her granddaughter too. I hardly talk to my wife anymore aside from arrangements for custody changes and visits. My mother-in-law divorced her husband and was actually entitled to spousal support from him, so it's nice knowing that he's giving her a good portion of his paychecks now. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.